Hello everyone, and welcome to the brand new 2023 How to Make a Five Nights at Freddy's game in Scratch tutorial. This series is going to be split up into 6 parts, and in this first part we are going to be covering the menu screen, including the static overlay, the glitching character, the play button and continue button, the fades, and a night screen display. Before we start, if you want to know how to make your Scratch look like this, look like mine, have cool stuff like this, because this is kind of what you're going to be seeing, in the link in the description below, I show a video of how to customize your Scratch to look just like this. Without further ado, let's get started. The first thing that we're going to want to do is obviously set up our menu screen. So what I like to do is come into our backdrops tab and choose an overall background color. I find that a very dark gray works well for me. Usually I set the color to 0, 0, and 10. We can just cover up this whole backdrop just like this. Gives us this nice dark gray without quite being black, because black never really looks good in the long run. You want to try to avoid perfect black and perfect white whenever you're designing a game. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to add our text to this screen. So select your text icon and set your color to whatever you'd like. Again, I'm not going to use perfect white. I'm actually going to set it to 0090 to give me a slightly gray tint on that white. Now, I'm going to rename this backdrop costume menu screen. You can head back to your coding menu and don't forget to save your project. What we're going to do is we are going to add our character to the screen. You can design your character however you want. I'm just going to design mine as the original ugly model, not original, a little bit upgraded, that we used so long ago. Here he is. So what I'm actually going to do is we're going to call this sprite title screen ugly. We can actually go ahead and center him in here, and then we can drag him wherever we'd like on the screen. I'm going to choose right here. It's very important you drag him to wherever you want on the screen, because we're going to use that for an easy way to decide the X and Y values later on. We're going to duplicate this costume, or you can make an entirely new one, because we need to set the times when he will glitch out of place. I've quickly ran through and made 3 more costumes. I rushed this together for the sake of the tutorial. Obviously, I want you to spend way more time on your designs. We have our normal variation, which I'm going to call this costume normal. And then we have our 3 glitch variations. So I'm going to call it glitch 1, glitch 2, and glitch 3. You don't have to make 3. You can actually make as many as you'd like. What we're going to do is right off the bat, we are going to go to our backdrops tab and pull out a when green flag is clicked. Underneath this when green flag clicked, we're actually going to come under events and grab a broadcast and make a new broadcast and name it menu screen. I'm going to capitalize it and put a dash before it, because that will make it very easy to find, because this is going to be a very common broadcast that we come back to quite a bit. The reason we're doing this is because you never usually want to call your green flag, because you can't call green flag in the game. Like, you can't grab a broadcast and broadcast a green flag. So we're going to avoid using this when green flag click as much as possible. In fact, we're only going to use it about 1 time. Head back to your character sprite, and we're going to do when I receive menu screen, because again, we are acting like this is our green flag. When I receive menu screen, we obviously want to select his location. You see, I had you place him where you wanted him, because right off the bat, when you pull out a go to X and Y block, it'll automatically choose the X and Y's that they're already at. So if you place them where you want on the screen, you don't even have to mess with these numbers. We are obviously going to want to set the beginning costume, and we want our first costume to just be normal. Of course, we also want the sprite to show. So let's drag out a show so that our sprite can show. Now what we need to do is set up our glitching effect. We're going to come to control and pull out a repeat until empty block. You can use repeat until empty loops the same way that forever loops work. These 2 blocks are actually the same thing, as long as you don't put anything inside of this repeat until up in this block. The only difference between the 2 is that a repeat until is actually easier on your computer to run than a forever loop is. Put a repeat until down, and then inside of this, we are going to grab a wait block. Go to your operators and pull out a pick random and slap that in there. And now we're going to decide our intervals for how often he's going to glitch. I'm going to set it to 5 to 8 seconds. However, you could be specific and do 5.00 and 8.00 to get very specific decimals to make it feel that much more sporadic and different. Every 5 to 8 seconds, he's going to glitch. So how do we actually set up a glitch? Let's head to control and grab a normal repeat and put that right underneath. Inside of this repeat, we're going to choose how many times he's supposed to glitch. If you don't know an exact number, you can actually just duplicate this pick random, put it in there, and say, let's want him to glitch 4 to 9 times. Inside of this, what you're going to do is go to your looks tab, pull out a switch costume 2, and now, instead of choosing which glitches yourself, you can duplicate your pick random, put it in there, and switch to costumes 2 to however many costumes you have. In my case, is 4. We do this, and then we go to our control tab, grab a weight, put it underneath, and put another pick random in there, and let's say 0.02 to 0.05. This is going to determine how long it stays on this costume. I want it to glitch really quickly. The higher the number you make these, the slower he will glitch between his costumes. And then after it's done doing that, make sure under your normal repeat block that you put another switch to costume, switch it back to normal so that it switches back to his normal sprite. Great. Let's save and take a look. Look at that. There's his glitch, and he's going to do this forever because that repeat until when you leave it empty will actually run forever. It's just easier on your computer. We set up our glitching character. That's actually all there is to it. Let's move on to the next piece of this tutorial, which is going to be our play button. Let's make a new sprite. What I like to do is come to our backdrop, grab our fill, and eyedrop the background of our menu screen. Come back to your play button sprite and make a rectangle with that color. Make sure it doesn't have an outline. Let's zoom in, grab our text option, and I'm going to set this to 0090 because again, using a white is usually never a good idea. Only time I use a perfect black is when it's for an outline of a character. So let's type in new game. We are going to have a costume in which the mouse is not touching it and another costume where the mouse is touching it. So I'm going to call this costume no mouse. I'm going to duplicate this costume and we are going to call this mouse. Right next to this, I'm going to take a text and we are going to switch the font to pixel, and I'm going to put a lowercase x again in that 0090 color, and I'm going to drag this right next to the new game. I'm going to line it up with the new game words. So it sits right next to it just like that. Therefore, when our mouse is touching it, it's going to switch to this sprite. Let's move into that now. First of all, let's name our new game button new game button. Under events, we're going to grab when I receive menu screen. Inside of this, what we're going to do is obviously decide where it goes. So you can drag your new game sprite wherever you want. I'm going to choose right here. Let's have it go there. We drag out a go to X and Y, which again should be the identical, but if it's not, make sure you're just checking these down here to make sure they're equal to the things in the blocks. Let's have it switched to no mouse. Let's obviously have the button show. Now let's set up the ability for it to sense if our mouse is touching it. Come to control and grab that repeat until. Inside of this repeat until, we are going to grab an if-else statement and put it inside. Come to sensing and grab touching mouse pointer. Inside this if-then statement, what you're going to do is make it say switch to costume mouse. Inside the else statement, you can duplicate the switch costume to block and set it to no mouse. So if it's touching the mouse, we switch the costume to mouse. If it's not touching the mouse, we switch it to not touching mouse. Let's take a look and see if that works. All right, it's in the right spot. Let's touch our mouse to the new game button. Look at that. It works perfectly. In our if-then touching mouse pointer, if, come to sensing, mouse down. If it's touching the mouse pointer, it'll sense if the mouse is down. If it is, we want it to start the night. Is we're going to make a broadcast in here, and I'm going to call it fade. Let's head to our list tab and make a new list, and we are going to call this background info. This list is going to keep track of a whole bunch of things that run in the background that the player never really sees. Let's head to our backdrop to set it up. Whenever we have a list like this is when I'll use the green flag again, because if we're running things under the menu screen, whenever you come to the menu, it's going to reset your whole list. We don't want that to happen. Underneath the when green flag is clicked, we're going to come to our lists tab and we are going to say delete all of background info. Go ahead and right click your green flag clicked and hit add a comment. That'll make this little box over here. This is really nice for keeping track of things that are going on in your game so that if you come back after a break, you remember what's happening. So I'm going to mark this background info, just so I know what it's talking about. The first channel in the list is going to keep track of the fade reason. I'll explain that in a minute. Just trust me for now. Come to our control, add a repeat, and inside of this repeat, we're going to put add 0 to background info. Since right now we only have one thing that I'm going to be putting into background info, I'm going to set this repeat to 1. That's all you need to do for now. If I show the background info list and we hit the green flag, you'll see it adds a 0 into channel 1. Let's get back to programming our new game button. Inside of the new game button, we're going to broadcast fade. However, before that, we need to set our fade reason. Why are we fading? So what we're going to do is in our list tab, we're going to grab a replace item 1, and we're going to put that above the broadcast fade. This is because we need to set the reason for the fade before we actually fade. So we know that item 1 of our background info, since we labeled it here, is the fade reason. So we're going to replace fade reason with 1, as we'll make another comment next to this, fade reasons. The first fade reason would be a new game. We have these two pieces of information here. Head back to your new game button. We need to replace item 1 of background info with something. That just means replacing our fade reason and then describing why the fade reason is. So we know that our first fade reason is because of a new game, which is equal to 1. Come to our new game and set it to 1. Now it's saying that our fade reason is new game. And then we'll broadcast fade. Let's make a new sprite for the actual fade. I'm going to use the same dark gray that I used for the background. I'm going to call this sprite fade. I'm also going to call the costume normal fade. Let's start programming in our fade. When the menu screen is clicked, the fade shouldn't even be here. So what we'll have it do is come to control and say stop other scripts in this sprite. Come to looks and add a hide. Really what that does is it just stops bugs in the future from even being able to happen. When we receive the broadcast fade, how do we actually make the fade fade? What we're going to want it to do is go to 0, 0 so that it's centered on our screen. Then we'll come to looks and grab set color effect, switch color to ghost, and set the ghost effect to 100. Ghost effect 100 is basically the exact same thing as using a hide block, except you can change how much it's hidden. Think of it like an opacity slider to be able to make the sprite see-through. So we set the ghost effect to 100. Then, and only then, once it's hidden, can we show it. Now this, if you run this, you won't be even able to see the fade, and that's exactly what we want. Now underneath this, we can come to control and grab a repeat loop and put it underneath. Let's set it to 20 because we need to be able to equal 100, and this will make sense in a second. I'm going to set it to 20, and then we're going to go to looks and grab a change color effect, not a set, a change ghost effect by -5. The reason I'm doing 5 here is because we have 20 in the loop. 20 times 5 equals 100. If you did repeat 10, you'd want to do -10, because 10 times 10 is 100. I'm doing repeat 20 since the fade will happen slower. The lower the number of repeats, the faster it will fade. But I want it to be a fairly slow fade. The reason we're doing a negative instead of a positive is because the ghost effect is already a positive number, so we need to decrease the number to make the fade start to show. You don't need to do this. I like to do it just to make sure nothing goes wrong. Underneath, we're going to set the ghost effect to 0. So let's take a look. When we hit new game, it fades in like that. But now it doesn't fade out. So let's set up a fade out. All you need to do is come to control, and let's say we grab our wait. How long do we want the fade to be on the screen before it starts to fade out? I think 1.5 seconds is plenty. I'm just going to right click the repeat loop and hit duplicate. It's going to duplicate everything we made. I'm I'm going to put it underneath, and instead of changing the ghost effect by -5, I want the fade to become invisible, so we're going to do positive so that the ghost effect climbs up, and then set ghost effect to 100, get rid of the weight 1.5, come to looks, and hit hide. This is what our fade should look like now. Let's take a look at what happens now. When we hit new game, the fade shows up, stays for a bit, and fades away. Why did I have us set up a fade reason? This is for afterwards. I'm going to make use of a custom block here. This may look confusing, but I'm going to explain it as best as I can. Come to your My Blocks and make a new block. Make the name of the block fade reason, just for the sake of easily understanding what it's for. We're going to tick this one without screen refresh so that it runs a lot faster. We're gonna hit OK. Drag your fade reason block right above the wait 1.5 seconds block. When making that new block, you get this giant define block. Fade reason. We need to check why we're fading. Let's come to control and grab an if else. If, come to operators and grab equal, we're gonna put 1 at the back. Go to our lists and grab item number of. So if item 1 of background info, which again is fade reason, if our fade reason equals 1, or new game, then we need to broadcast the new game. So we wanted to show our newspaper. Let's come to events and make a new broadcast. We are going to call this broadcast newspaper. And that's all we need to do. Now let's actually make our newspaper. Make a new sprite. I'm going to quickly throw this together. All right, I just finished my newspaper art. I'm going to call this sprite newspaper. Again, I recommend you spend much more time on this than I do. I'm doing it lazily just for the sake of this tutorial. Let's head to the code. When I receive menu screen, we are going to stop other scripts in the sprite and hide. Receiving newspaper, we're going to go to 00, show. This shows in the middle of our fade, but it happens after the fade is already completely concealed the screen. Let's take a look. Hit new game. Fade shows up. Oh, but look at that. It goes to the top even though our fade hasn't finished. So in our newspaper, before it shows, we're going to hit go to back layer and put that right in there. Now let's test it. All right, the newspaper shows up. However, our play button and our character are still in the way. Let's fix that. Come to our title screen, character. When we receive newspaper, we are going to go to control, grab stop other scripts in the sprite, and hit hide. Here I can give you a good example of what the stop other scripts in this sprite is gonna do. Stop other scripts in this sprite. This is a script, which will stop this from constantly running, which will make the game run faster. I'm going to grab this piece of code and drag it into our new game button. Put that right underneath. Now let's take a look. Hit new game, it fades. Here's the newspaper. What happens if we constantly click new game? Look at this. If we click new game really fast, we can completely stop the fade and kind of break it. Let's stop that from being able to happen. Inside of new game, we're actually going to make another costume. Let's copy the normal no mouse sprite. We're going to call this no action, meaning when it's on this costume, no actions with it will be able to happen. Right in here when the mouse is down, after fade, switch the costume to no action, and then in control, we're going to grab a stop this script, put it right underneath. Therefore, it'll stop this script, which will stop the repeat until loop. Let's take a look and see if we can keep clicking it now. Click, and as we keep clicking, nothing happens, and it still goes away, just as it should. There we go. We have our newspaper complete. Now, let's add in the static. In order to add in the static, we'll have to download it in the first place. In the link in the description, I have a link to where you can go ahead and download the static. I had a few people who didn't know how to add the static last time, so let me show you how to do it now. Following the link in the description will take you to this page, FNAF Static Download. You're going to just click Download File right here, DK Universe's Static Tutorial Pack. Go ahead and hit download, and it will install. Head back to TurboWarp and open up your file managers, and right here you should see DK Universe's Static Tutorial Pack. If you have WinRAR like I do, you'll see this icon. If you don't, it might be a cone, or it might be just a folder file with a zipper on it. Regardless, it should be a .zip. Right-click that folder and hit extract here. That should give you an open folder. Feel free to delete the original zip file. Let's make a new sprite for static. Make a new sprite and call it static. Now we need to import the costumes. So open up your DK Static Tutorial Pack, double-clicking the folder, and you'll see all of these different statics. Grab all of them and drag them right into the costumes. If that doesn't work because you don't have a specific add-on, you can manually, inside of your costumes, hover over the plus and grab an upload costume, where you can then open the static pack and individually add each costume by costume. You have all the static imported. Let's continue. What we need to do is enlarge in this first of all, because as you can see, the static doesn't even cover the whole area. If you set it to 150, it will. That's just setting that size. Inside of static, we're going to come to events and do when I receive menu screen. We obviously want the static to go to 00. We want its size to be set to 150. And the costume doesn't matter what it starts on, so we're not going to set that. We are going to make it go to the front layer, since we want this on top of everything else. We want to set its ghost effect to, let's say, 75. We can tweak that however we want. And then we want it to show. But it's not going to transfer through the costumes. So come to Control, grab a repeat until, and inside just put next costume. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Look at that. You can see the static moving on top of the screen. And since we didn't use a when this sprite clicked sensor, we can still click the new game. Great. If you don't like how see-through it is, the higher the number you make this, the more see-through it'll be. I think 65 works for me, but you can tweak it and do whatever you'd like. There, we have static added. Now, let's work on the night screen. Obviously, in FNAF, when the night screen shows, the static isn't there. So, in the newspaper, we have to decide how long the newspaper even shows up for. Let's have it say, wait, maybe 5 seconds. It'll stay on the newspaper screen, and then it's going to immediately snap cut, no fades, to our night screen. Let's set that up. We actually need to make our night screens. Come to your backdrops. I'm going to Control-C or hit copy on this background, not the text. We're going to make a new backdrop, and I'm going to paste with Control-V or hitting the paste button, the backdrop on there, so it stays this nice dark gray. I'm going to name this backdrop Night 1. Now, I'm going to grab my text and set it to 0090, and we're going to type in Night 1. Let's make that really big. I have a kitty right next to me. Then I'm going to make another line that says 12 a.m. Night 1, 12 a.m. I'm going to duplicate this backdrop and switch Night 1 just to say Night 2. And 7, because there's the secret 6th night, and then there's 7 for custom night. Now, if you want to have more nights, you can do that. If you want to have less nights, you can do that as well. Back to our newspaper. After waiting our 5 seconds or however long you want, we are going to do a broadcast called Night Screen. Right before that, we're going to hide the newspaper. In our static, we need to grab our when I receive, say when I receive Night Screen. We are going to come to Control, stop, other scripts in this sprite, and then hide the static. Let's come to our backdrops now. Pull it up here. We'll do when I receive Night Screen. We're going to do switch backdrop to. How are we going to decide which backdrop to switch it to? Let's make a variable and call the variable night number. What we're going to do is come to operators and grab a join block and put it right in here. Since we named our costumes Night 1, Night 2, Night 3, Night 4, Night 5, Night 6, and Night 7 in this format that's identical besides the number, is we can say in this first part, we can write night, just like the name of our backdrops, and then we can grab the night number variable and put it in the second spot. So let's say our night is set to 2. When we run that, it says Night 2, which is the name of one of our costumes. Switch to backdrop night, whatever number it's on, and that's actually all we need to do. We do have to set up a way for it to decide what night we're really on. Obviously, when we hit new game, we're going to start on Night 1, so we can go ahead and come to our variables, and right above this replace until, we can do set night number to 1. Oh, look at this. When we start the game, the backdrop doesn't go to our title screen. So inside of our backdrop, what we can do is go to events and grab a when I receive menu screen, switch to backdrop menu screen. Let's test it. Everything looks right. When we hit new game, it fades, shows us our newspaper, and after 5 seconds cuts right to the Night 1. I think we can make this effect look a bit cooler, and if you're familiar with FNAF, you'll know you see some white lines that show up on the screen. Let's make those. I'm going to call these white static lines. And the way to do this is to just simply grab a square. We're going to set this to white. I'm going to do 0090 for a slightly different white. And we just have to design some lines. So here's one. we make another costume for another. You can make quite a few costumes doing this. The more, I feel, the better. I just made 10 random additions of 1 to 3 lines on the screen. Now, let's start programming. When I receive menu screen, we will stop other scripts in the sprite and hide the lines. When I receive night screen, we will go to 0, 0, go to front layer, and then we will grab show, and we'll go to control and grab a repeat block. Let's say it'll choose 5 random things to go through. Repeat 5 times, switch costume to, pick random 1 through 10. This last number will be however many you created. Since I have 10 costumes, it'll be to 10. I don't feel any need for a wait, so let's then afterwards put hide. Let's test what that looks like. There. I think that looks great. We have one more thing to add, and that's our continue button. Let's duplicate our new game button, and we're going to call this the continue button. Since we duplicated it, we have all the scripts from the last one. The only things we have to change is where it shows up. But first, let's design what it looks like. Continue is a bit smaller than new game is, so I'm actually going to condense how big the hitbox is. Our no mouse sprite, our mouse sprite, which again, we just need to add that pixelated X, and then our no action. But you might know about Five Nights at Freddy's games is when you hover over your continue button, it will actually display what night you're going to go to. Let's set up how to do that. So underneath our mouse, we are actually going to say mouse 1, and this 1 is going to determine the night that we're going to. So if we duplicate it to mouse 2, we first need to actually add what night we're going to. Underneath continue, but still inside of our hitbox, I'm going to write night 1. I'm going to put it right underneath the word continue. Going to duplicate mouse 1 and just change night 1 to say night 2. Duplicate it again, set it to 3, and so on and so forth until you reach 5. Since night 6 is always its own button, we only need to make it go up to night 5. Don't forget your no action costume. Now, let's change the code up just a little bit. Inside of here, instead of switching costume to mouse 1, what we're going to do is switch costume to, we're going to use the same thing we did for the night screen, and switch it to join mouse, and then the night number. Mouse, because that's just how we have it named. Mouse 1, mouse 2, 3, 4. But now you might realize we don't actually set the night on the first go until we click new game. Inside of our backdrops here, under the green flag, to set the night to 1. Again, we're putting it under green flag since this only occurs 1 time. Head back to your continue button, and everything should be set as it is. You actually are going to get rid of this set number block because we're not going to need it. This fade reason stays the same, fade stays the same, no action stays the same. We have to give it a new fade reason, which actually, upon clicking a new game, since there's no newspaper to go to if you are on night 2, we can actually get rid of the fade reason and switch the broadcast straight to night screen. In newspaper, we're going to keep that the same. We're going to duplicate this and put night screen at the same time, since we don't actually have time to hide it somewhere else, and we can't put a hide underneath the stop this script. Perfect. Now we actually have to figure out where it goes though. Let's move this continue down. And what I like to do to make sure that these hitboxes aren't touching is temporarily switch their colors. We can see that they're not touching. I can line them up. When I'm done, I can change the color back to what it was. Don't forget in your continue button to actually swap out where they should go. You can check down here. Great. Let's take a look. Here we are. We hover over new game. We hover over continue. It says we're going to night 1. When we click on continue, broadcast night 1, but our new game and our character stay there. Let's fix that. Go to your character and duplicate his newspaper sprite and just change it to night screen. You can then drag this right into new game and it'll already be inside of it. Let's try it one more time. When we hit continue, boom, our night screen shows up. When we hit new game, our continue button does stay there if you notice, which would break it for us if we hit both really fast. Let's fix that real quick. Coming down to continue, when we receive, let's duplicate this and say fade. All we need to have it do is switch its costume to no action and add a stop other scripts in the sprite. Now let's see if we can break it. No, we cannot. But you realize how long continue stays there for. The reason for that is because continue is actually at a higher layer. So if we set the continue button to go to the back layer up here, we can see that that immediately makes a very small difference. That difference being solving the problem. Great. That's all I have to show you in this tutorial. thank you all so much for watching. If you found it helpful, please like the video, and tell me what you'd like to see for this series in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace. Hello everyone, and welcome back to how to make a Five Nights at Freddy's tutorial in Scratch. This is part 2. In this episode, we will be covering menu music and sounds, a scrolling office, a darkness overlay, doors and lights, and a phone call. Let's get started. So, I realized that in the last tutorial, I didn't show you how to add any music or sounds to your title screen. Usually when I make games, sounds are the last thing I add. However, I want to change that habit since I think it's kind of a bad one. Let's get into how to add some sounds. The first thing you're going to want to do is actually find the menu music that you want to use. Now, there's a lot of rights that go into what sounds you can use, and there's a big habit on Scratch where people will use sounds that they don't have the copyright to. Now, that doesn't really matter in Scratch. However, if you ever end up making games in a different software, such as Unity, and want to make money off of your games in the future, you want to break the habit of using songs that you don't have the license for, or songs that don't belong to you. So I'm going to show you a few ways that you can find some songs or sounds that you can use without being punished. So here we are on YouTube. Now I feel like what most people would do is they just look up a sound. Maybe they'd look up a sound such as creepy music. They'd find a sound that they like. Say they find something like this. While yes, this is creepy music, you'll want to check the description and see what the usage rights are. This one just says creepy and simple horror background music. However, there's nothing that says whether or not it's copyright or not. If you can't find anything saying whether or not it's copyright, I wouldn't use it. Here we go, here's another one, a creepy old music box when memories break. If you take a look down here, this piece is stock. Right here it says, anyone can use this song for whatever freely, please give credit. So usually when giving credit, what they want you to do is put their name along with a link to the YouTube video. So I'm going to use this one as an example. So an easy way to download music like this off of YouTube is to right click the screen and click copy video URL, open up a new tab and type in YouTube to MP3. There's this one, ytmp3.nu is usually what I end up using. You can paste the text in and hit convert. It'll start converting the video after it's done loading, and then you can hit download. After it's done downloading, I want you to open up a notepad file, which is usually what I end up doing. Open up a notepad file, and I'm going to call this music credit for FNAF, or Five Nights at Ugly's. And then I'll write down, this guy's name is Bad Wabbit. I usually do this format, Bad Wabbits, with a space, and then a dash, and then another space, and then an actual link to the video, just like that. I'm going to save this file for later so that when I release the game, I can put all of these credits in the description. This is a good practice to have. Nobody likes someone that steals music. For sounds, I recommend coming to freesound.org. Every single sound that you see on this website can be used freely in your games. So let's say we want a static sound. We can type in static in the search bar. I like this one. It's important to look at what file type you're getting because some file types Scratch won't accept. This is a .wav file, wave format. This is something that Scratch can't handle. Off the top of my head, I know Scratch can also handle .mp3s and .oggs. You're going to go ahead and click download, and right here it says this sound is not in the public domain. Please attribute/credit the sound if you use. An example of how you might like to credit is putting in the descriptions and details. Look at this. He gives the exact thing he wants you to put. So go ahead and grab what he wants you to write, Control-C, and add it to that notepad file. These are always important things that you want to think about, because it will avoid having to deal with legal troubles down the road. So here we are back in the game, and we actually have to set up our sound files. So the certain sound files that I have right now are the menu theme, the static sound, and the sound that's going to play when you hover your mouse over the new game and continue buttons. For music, usually I like to set this in the backdrops. However, you can make a sprite that works on music by itself. I'm actually going to do that. This sprite does not need to have any sort of art attributed with it since you'll never see it anyways. I'm going to call this background music. Before we start coding, we need to actually implement the sound of the background music. Now, you do want to keep in mind that you're wanting each sound to, in general, be around the same decibel level so that you don't have some sounds that are much louder than others. I'm going to rename this menu theme. So inside of here, when we receive menu screen, come into the sound tab and hit stop all sounds. And we also want to stop other scripts in the sprite. This will stop every other sound that is playing from playing, and then, and only then, can we start the next bit of music. Inside of a repeat until, we're going to come to the sound and grab a play sound menu theme until done. If we load up the project, you'll hear it. Now let's add in the static sound. The static sound I'm going to put in underneath the static. What we're going to do is add another when I receive menu screen, come to control, and grab a repeat until. Inside of this repeat until, we're going to grab play sound static until done. Let's take a look. As we see, everything is working as intended. However, the static, in my opinion, sounds a little bit loud. This is when you'll have to do a little bit of audio balancing. Come into your sounds, select your sound by pressing Control A or Command A if you're on Mac, and you can just grab the softer to make it a little bit quieter. There. You can still hear it, however, I think it sounds much better. Let's go ahead and choose how our buttons make sounds. Come to the new game button. We're obviously going to upload the sound that we're using. I'm using this one. I'm not going to use this entire sound. I just want this big spike right here. So I'm going to drag this out, press backspace, and then drag this part out and press backspace so I get this sound. I think it's a little slow. I'm going to call this quick static. What we could do is underneath touching mouse pointer, you might think you'd want to start quick static sound. But that just makes it sound like this. And we don't want that to happen. So what we can do is come to events and drag out a when I receive menu screen. Inside of here, we will grab a repeat until. And inside of the repeat until, what we'll need to do is grab an if then statement. Inside the if then statement, go to sensing and grab touching mouse pointer. Come to sound and grab start quick static. Directly after that, come back to control and grab a wait until. Inside of the wait until, go to operators and put in a not. And inside of the not, put in a touching mouse pointer. Now if you take a look, it won't do the glitching since it has to wait for the mouse pointer to not be touching the block again in order for it to reset. I think this sounds a little bit too loud, so again, come to your audio, press Ctrl A to select it all, and make it a little softer. Let's take a look at that. I like that a lot. Now we need to add that to our continue button. So what you can do is grab this little bit of code we just made and drag it right onto your continue button and let go. You'll see the piece of code and continue button is now there. You can come to new game, grab your quick static sound and drag it into the continue button. And now the continue button has the same sound. So now if we take a look, you see it works just fine. I want that sound to play upon this night screen showing up. In our background music tab, I'm going to name it background music / sounds. Grab a when I receive and say night screen. And we're just going to, once again, grab the quick static sound from continue a new game and put it in the background sounds. And underneath this, we're going to do start sound quick static. Let's take a look. The sound plays, but you might notice that the static sound and the menu sound continued playing. So we have to find a way to stop that when this shows up. So let's take a look at how long the menu song plays while the static is here. So the static stays on top of the newspaper but disappears during the night screen. So what we can do is, at when I receive night screen, we can say stop other scripts in the sprite, put it above the start sound, and you can also go to sound and hit stop all sounds. Let's take a look. We'll test it on continue first. Fantastic. On new game, the menu theme and the static continues playing, but as soon as it cuts out perfectly. There we go. Now we have all the sounds that we need. Now we can move on to the other parts of this tutorial. The next thing you're going to be working on is an office, so you'll need to obviously get an office sprite. I have an office sprite that you can use as a template. I highly suggest that you change it and do not use mine exactly, since that will show unoriginality and laziness. But in the link in the description, I will link you to a page where you can download my exact assets. Following the link in the description will take you to this screen where you can see DK Universe's FNAF Office template. You can go ahead and download that. Let's make a new sprite and just call it Office. Inside of your file manager, you'll find your zip file, and just like the static, you'll right click it and click extract here. You can feel free to get rid of the zip file after it's done. Open up this and you'll see a bunch of SVGs. You can go ahead and grab them all and import them. If that doesn't work, again, you can hover over this and hit upload costume and upload each one individually. Now when you upload it, you'll see that each costume doesn't fit the box that you're seeing. That's because we intend on scrolling our office back and forth. You'll see there's numbered multiple times. This is because of the clock that shows up. I want to keep track of the time through a normal clock instead of a digital clock. If you want to change that, obviously, when you make your office, you'll make your clock look a little different. So the way we'll start is by grabbing a when I receive menu screen and having it stop other scripts in the sprite, hiding. Then after that, what we'll need to do is actually set up a broadcast that brings us to our office. You'll notice here on night screen, it just switches our costume. How long do we want it to stay on the night screen? I think 3.5 seconds is plenty. And then after that, we are going to broadcast office show. Inside of our office, we're going to see when I receive office show. We are going to set size to 100% or whatever yours happens to be. If you are modeling your own office, please keep in mind to stay within the confines of these thick black lines at the top and bottom, because the office is set up in such a way that you can't actually see them when you're playing the game. If you're using your own template, all of these numbers will have to be figured out yourself, since I don't know your exact sizes. We want to set the size to 100%. And then we want to grab a repeat until. Inside of this repeat until is going to make it go to the position that it needs to. Inside of motion, we're going to grab a go to 0, 0, or go to whatever it happens to be. And the X is going to change. The Y is going to stay 0, since that's where we want it. What we could do is say we wanted our size at 150. As you see, the bigger you try to make this, the smaller it gets. Actually, 100% isn't actually possible with how big the sprite is. If you look inside, you'll see you have a costume called Sizer, which is a tiny little dot. What we'll do is, in order to break how Scratch does sizing, we'll switch our costume to Sizer, then set the size to 150, then switch our costume back to maybe 1, just as an example. And now you'll see that upon office showing, you'll see it the actual size in which it is. Let's say I like 150, which I happen to. That number is probably going to be different for you. Then you have to decide where exactly you want your Y value to be. I'm going to choose -95, because if we run that, we'll see that it keeps in all the information that we need without cutting anything out and without having a bunch of empty space on the top or bottom. Now we have to set up how the X position is going to work. So we're going to make use of where your mouse pointer is to decide where the office is going to appear. So if you come to operators, we can test some stuff. If you pull out a multiplication symbol and put it inside of your X, come to sensing, take your mouse X and put it inside, and try maybe on the other side, just as a test, putting -1 and just seeing what happens when we run that. You'll see that right there, it already follows your mouse pretty well. However, it's not nearly enough. So if we do say 1.5, you'll see that now we can see way more, except you can also see that it cuts off at the end. So 1.5 is a little much. Let's try -1.3. And as you see, that almost does it. However, on one side, you can still see that little black line. We don't really want to see that. So I'll try -1.25. And -1.25 does the job very nicely. If you're using my template, 1.25 is your sweet spot when using 150 size. And there you go. There's your office scrolling already done. The next thing we're going to set up is a darkness overlay, because this screen looks a little bright and a little boring. So we're going to make a new sprite, and we're going to call it darkness overlay. The way I like to create overlays of darkness is by grabbing the square, coming into fill and selecting this circular one at the end, making the second one black, and the first one a darker gray. I then cover the whole screen like this, and this is what you want to see. Inside of the code, we're going to come to events and say when I receive menu screen. You know the drill by now. Grab a stop other scripts in the sprite and hide. Then when you receive office show, we're going to show the office overlay, and inside of a repeat until, we are going to have it go to the front layer, since we always want our darkness overlay on top of everything. And then we need to decide where it's going to go. You could just say go to 0, 0, and that might work for you, but I want it to change based on where my mouse is. But first, we actually need to make it see-through by coming into looks and setting the ghost effect to, let's say, 50. That makes it pretty see-through and makes it a little bit darker. The higher the number, the lighter it will be. The lower the number, the darker it will be. I think 50 works for me though. Next, we need to set up how it moves. We're going to use the same method that we used for the office, where we grab multiplication symbols and put them in both sides. Come to sensing, put mouse X on the X side and mouse Y on the Y side. And let's try doing something like -0.5, -0.5. You can see what that does. It moves it around nicely like that, but it's opposite of the way our mouse is going. And you'll also see that it cuts off. The way you can fix that is pretty easy. So we can use our sizer method again by making a new costume, calling it sizer. Let's name our normal costume just darkness. And inside of the sizer, just putting one little dot directly in the center. We can switch costume at the beginning to sizer, set the size to 150, and then switch the costume back to darkness. Now you'll see that it covers the screen and the lightness can be seen just like that. However, it is opposite of our mouse and I want it to be the same. So if we change these -0.5s to +0.5s, that problem is fixed. It doesn't perfectly follow our mouse, but I like that. Now, when we run it together, we can tell that the office has been started because we can see the darkness overlay. However, we can't see the office. We forgot to add a show to our office. There we go, and we can see that the scrolling office and the darkness overlay is working as intended. Now we get to work on another thing that a lot of people had problems with in the first tutorial, which is our doors and our light buttons. Let's get started. In the link in the description, you can find a download for the door buttons and the light buttons. You download them the exact same way in which you did the office, so I'll import those and we'll continue. Before we import, I will say that I find that using size 130, mouse X times -1 and a Y of 50 following my template is actually going to work best for me. So here you can see I imported my door buttons. I made a new sprite called a left door button, and then here we have a sprite called door off and a sprite called door on. Again, you can download these exact assets or you can make your own, that doesn't really matter. Coming into our code, the first thing we'll need to do is obviously when I receive menu screen, stop other scripts in the sprite and hide. When we start office show is obviously show the buttons, and we want to switch the costumes to off because the door is obviously going to be off or open when it starts. We're going to make a variable called left door state, and right here we're going to set left door state to what we're going to call open. There are going to be a few states for it. Door states, 1 is going to be open, 2 is going to be closed, 3 is going to be opening, and 4 is going to be closing. Open, closed, opening, closing. Pretty easy to follow. So we're setting the left door state to 1, meaning that when the night starts, the door is going to start open. Grab a repeat until and slap that underneath. We're going to come to motion and hit go to. This is how we're going to figure out where exactly the buttons need to go. So if we show our office and imagine that our buttons are here, we'll see first of all these buttons are a little big. I'm going to shrink them down to 80. I think that looks nice. Having them like this. So this is generally speaking where we're going to want them. In order for the door button to be able to understand where the office is, we need to have the office output a number so that the door button has something to read. So inside of office, we are going to make a variable called office X. And inside of this repeat until, we're going to set office X to go to motion and put X position. Inside of our repeat until, where we're deciding where the door button goes, you're going to need to do a little bit of math and you're going to do a little bit of tweaking to figure out exactly where you want it. I feel like I'd want my button fairly in the middle-ish around here. So 69 is close, but I'm going to say 75 inside of our Y for how high we want it. And then inside of our X, we need to set up how it's going to do that math. So you'll grab an addition symbol and you'll put it in. On the second bubble of the addition, you're going to drag in a division symbol. Come to sensing and put a mouse X in the center bubble. And since we decided we're going to use -1 to move based on our mouse pointer, we need to make this one -1 as well. Now this just needs to be a normal X position, but since it's going to be off screen when the office is centered, this X value actually needs to be pretty large. I already know what it is for me, which personally it should be -447, and even if that was wrong, we just have to tweak it. For example, if I said -400 and we ran office show, you'd see that when we come in, it does track, just not quite right? It's a little off, so we tweak it. I'm gonna say 447, run office show again, and you'll see it is in a pretty good spot. I actually want it moved over a little bit more, personally, so I'll make this number a little bigger, -450, run office show again, and that's much better and much more centered to where I want it. Now you'll see that when we move our mouse this way, the door button actually follows our mouse cursor, which we don't want. We want it to hide once it reaches a specific point, most likely the point where it starts to follow the screen. So what we'll need to do there is grab an if-else statement and put it underneath our go-to. Inside of this if-then, what we're going to do is go to operators and grab a greater than symbol and put this inside. We're going to come to variables and grab office X, put it in the first bubble, and now we need to figure out where the office X needs to be in order for it to start hiding our button. So temporarily show your office X and let's take a look. So let's watch office X when the door button begins to follow the screen, when it starts to follow it. So if you take a look really slowly, pixel by pixel, we can see that it starts to follow at 197. So in our door button, we need to check if the office X is greater than 196. If it is, we will show our door button. If it's not, we'll hide it. Let's test that out. There's the door, and as it leaves the vicinity, we can see it actually travels 1 pixel. Change that to 197 then. You can see that it disappears as the screen goes away. Perfect. We have that button working correctly in terms of following the office. Now we actually have to make it do what it's supposed to do. I'm actually going to rename this office show. Renaming is a special add-on in Turbo Warp and Scratch add-ons that you can find. If you don't have it, you can either not change the name of the broadcast or make a new broadcast and switch all the office shows to this one. I'm going to rename office show Night Start. That's all I'm doing. The broadcasts stay exactly the same. I'm just renaming it. Now what we need to do is grab a when I receive, and we are going to be testing on Night Start. So underneath your Night Start, we're going to grab a repeat until, and then under this repeat until, we are going to grab an if statement, come to operators and throw an and in there. So if touching mouse pointer and the mouse is down, meaning we are touching the button and we are clicking it, then what we need to do is put an if else statement inside, and inside of this if else, we need to grab an equals and put it inside. And now we need to start using our left door state variable. So if left door state equals 1, which is again open, the left door state is open, we need to switch the costume to door on and set the left door state to 4, meaning the door is going to be closing. So when we click the button, if the door is open, we are going to make it start closing. Then we can duplicate this if else, put it inside, switch it to just a normal if. If the door is equal to 2 or closed, then we will set the costume to door off and switch the door state to 3 or opening. Fantastic. That's about all we need. Now, if you wanted to add in a sound effect for the door closing, now would be your time to do so. So I actually have a sound to upload. You'll have to find your own. I'm using this sound, which is actually the exact sound from Five Nights at Freddy's 1. Underneath your door state, you will grab play sound, door slamming until done, and you'll just put that underneath both. So now you'll see that when you start the project, nothing will actually happen besides this costume changing and the sound playing. You'll see we can't click it again because the state of the door is closing and there's nothing to stop it from closing. This is where the actual door will come in handy. So the way to make the door is pretty simple. All we need to do is come to the office and slide our way over to the door, which again, if you downloaded it, this is vector. So you can grab this and hit Control C, make a new sprite, call it left door, and Control V, and it'll paste it exactly where it needs to be. You want to keep the door right over here. You don't want to center it because it'll already be perfectly in place and aligned with your office. Now what you'll need to do is animate the door falling down as it comes down. I'm going to do this, and if you want to use my exact assets, I'll leave a link in the description where you can download it. Here, if we take a look, we have our open door, and then I made a few sprites of it closing all the way down to a closed, and then I have a light on sprite as well as one of our usual sizers. Again, if you want to copy this exactly, you can. If you want to download it, a link will be in the description. Let's get to programming. Upon receiving menu screen, we will stop other scripts in the sprite and hide. When we receive night start, we will switch our costume to our sizer, show, and set our size to the same size as our office, which in my case is 130. Then we will switch our costume to open. We will then grab a repeat until, and inside of this repeat until, we will use our same motion controls. So -50 is exactly where we want this if you're using my template. If you're not and you have your own, you'll have to mess around with your Y value to get it exactly where you want it. In our operators, we're going to grab a division symbol and do -1 with our mouse X in the first side. We'll put an if else underneath and grab a greater than symbol and put it inside. I'm going to use 50 just for now as an example, but we're doing our Office X hide and show again, just like we did with the button. Show and hide. Take a look and see how it plays out. We'll see the doors there, but not quite lined up correctly. We can fix that fairly easily. Let's first of all make our Y a little higher. So let's say -48. Look at that, -44 seems to be just about where I want it. Actually, I'll do -45. Pretty well set. If you're finding that even after lining it up, it still isn't quite there, we're just going to use exactly what we did on our door buttons, which is adding an already existing exposition by adding an addition symbol, and I'm going to say -5 just as a test. Go ahead and test that out and see if it lines up well. If you take a look, we see it lines up pretty perfectly. We're going to make another when I receive, night start, and inside of here, we're going to grab a repeat until. Inside of this repeat until, we're going to grab an if else statement. Inside of the if else statement, we're going to put an equal sign. So we're going to check if left door state equals 1, which again means open, we are going to switch our costume to open. Duplicate this if else and put it inside of the else statement. If the left door state equals 2 or closed, we're going to switch the costume to closed. If the left door state is 4 or closing, we are going to have to set up the animation for closing. So the way we do that is by setting the costume to closing 1 and counting how many costumes after closing 1 there are. So after this, we have 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 before closed exists. So what we need to do is come to control and grab a repeat. So we had 15, so that's what we're going to set that number to. And we are going to grab next costume and put it inside. Afterwards, we're going to switch our costume to closed just to double check and make sure we are on that closed costume. And then we need to switch our left door state to closed or 2, which will allow us to actually press the button again. Doing this will also make sure you can't spam the button and break the door. Since we did it that way, we have to now make an opening version of it. So we're going to duplicate what we have and say if the left door state is opening or 3, then we need to set our costume to closing 16, the last closing animation. So there's 15 before. And the way we do this, since there's no previous costume button, is grab a switch costume to, come to operators and grab a minus symbol and put it inside, put 1 in the second bubble, and grab costume number and put it in the first, and that will make it go to the previous costume. Then we're going to switch costume close to costume open and set left door state to open, which is 1. We're going to leave this else statement empty because in a later tutorial, we will come back to it. Great, let's take a look. So here we are. When we press door, it closes. We press it again, it opens. And if we spam click it, it won't actually do anything until the animation is fully finished. See that we can move even while the door is being operated. So we have one door finished. We might as well set up the light button for that door as well. What we're going to do is make a new sprite. I have downloadable buttons that you can use, but if you'd like to make your own, that's fine as well. I'm going to call this sprite left light button, and let's get to programming. So we're going to start off how we always start off, by doing when I receive menu screen to stop other scripts in this sprite and hide. When I receive night start, we are obviously going to need the sprite to show and switch its costume to light off. I'm going to set its size manually to 80 again. However, you also can feel free to come in here and throw in a set size. You can do that with your door as well. Now we need to come to control and do a repeat until, and inside of this repeat until, we need to set up the go to. So we're going to do go to. I'm going to say y0 because if we're just looking at how our office looks, say I want it about right here, that's pretty close to 0 as it is, so I'm going to test 0 and see how that works. Then I'm going to copy the code exactly for the other side from our door, an addition symbol with a division symbol in the second half, grabbing our mouse X to put in the center and doing a -1 for the final bubble, and in the first doing whatever we put here, which I think was -450. Yes, -450. Let's test and just make sure that lines up well. I think it does, but now we notice that our door button doesn't go to the top, so let's fix that real quick by coming to our left door and just saying go to front layer at the beginning. It won't be above our darkness overlay because our darkness overlay has a go to front, it'll repeat. Feel free to put that go to front on your light button as well. I think it lines up pretty well. Yep, it lines up with the door pretty well too. Now we have to set up its hiding feature, which we can actually just go ahead and grab from our door button and put it into our light button. Slide it right in. And look at that. Ooh, look at that, our door also isn't showing up. Again, here if you're having this problem, come to your left door and simply throw on a go to front under its night start. Cool, let's finish setting up our light button functionality. We're going to make a new when I receive night start, and underneath this we're going to put a repeat until loop. Inside we're going to put an if statement and check if we're touching the mouse pointer and the mouse is down. Again, just checking if we're clicking it. Then we'll grab an if else statement and we'll need to check for a few things. So we're going to put an or in here and put an or inside of it so that we have 3 things to check. And one of them is if our left door state equals closed, if it equals opening, or if it equals closing. Because we only want to be able to turn the light on if the door is 100% open. Inside of here, we will put nothing at the first half because if the door is closing, closed, or opening, we don't want anything to happen. If it is completely open, then what we will need to do is check if it's completely open, just as a double check factor. So let's grab an if else and put it in the else. Come to operators and grab an equal sign, and we need to check if it's open, so 1, and then a left door state. If left door state equals 1, we will switch our costume to light on. Then we're going to set our left door state to light on. Let's come to here and add some more stuff to this. 5 will equal light on. So we'll set our left door state to 5, meaning light on. And then I'm going to throw in a wait 0.5 seconds just to make sure that you can't spam the light too much and break something. We're going to duplicate what we have here, set this to an if, and then check if the left door state equals light on, so 5. Then we will set the costume to light off and set the left door state to open. There we go. Inside of our left door, underneath all of this, big bit of code we had here, setting up how it looks. In this one, what we're going to do is grab an if else statement and put an equal sign inside of it, and check if the left door state is light on, which is 5. Then what we need to do is just have it switch the costume to light on. Great, let's take a look. Let's hit the light button. It turns the light on, it turns it off. When the door closes, we can't turn the light on. And when the light's on, we can't close the door until the light's off. Now we have to do that with the other side of the door, which is a lot easier than you might think it'll be. So what we need to do is obviously duplicate our left door button and our left light button. Let's just rename these accordingly to right door button and right light button. So instead of our right door button, we don't have to change a whole lot. One thing we need to do is make a new variable. Call this new variable right door state. Now obviously here we need to change left door state to right door state and change our -450 to a 450 and change our 197 to a -197. Okay, before we test anything else, let's make sure that it shows up correctly as it should. Whoop, it almost does. You see that it follows until it reaches this point, then it breaks a little bit. All we'll have to do to fix that problem is swap our hide and our show. Should fix it. Just like that, the door button shows up. However, we'll see that it is not quite centered how we want it. So I'm going to try changing this to -195, changing 450 to 447, see how we like it. A lot more centered. It's still a little off-centered from where it is. So we'll switch this down. I'll say 445, a little more, 443. 443 is where I like it. And then again, we have it disappear exactly where it's supposed to. Feels good. Now, before we start setting up what the door button does, I'm going to set up the light button to go where it needs to go. So we want to copy what we did here. So 443 for me. Again, you'll have to do some testing for yourself. 443, and then we changed this to a -195. Let's test to make sure that it's in the right spot, which it is. However, it is all messed up with how it shows up because we forgot to swap our show and our hide. But now we'll see that both door buttons and light buttons show up where they should. Now let's actually code our buttons to work. So coming to our right door button, what we need to do is if right door state equals open, door on, set right door state to 4 or closing, and play the door slamming sound, which we do have in here. If the right door state is 2 or closed, set the door to off, and set the right door state to 3 or opening, and play the sound. In our right light button, we'll need to check if the right door is closing, if the right door is opening, and if the right door is closed. If it's not, then we'll check if the right door state is 1 or open, switch it to on, and set the right door state to 5 or light on. If the right door state is 5 or light on, we will switch the costume to light off and set the right door state to 1 or open. Now what we need to do is copy our left door and make it a right door. We can't just simply copy this one since, again, the location has to be precise. So once we get a right door imported with, again, all of the costumes loaded in, but on the opposite side, we'll just need to recode what we have. If you don't want to recode, which I'm sure you don't, you can come to left door and drag most of the code right into your right door, and we can start programming off of this. We want this to be -50, except we're probably going to have this on the wrong side, so I'm just going to try swapping most of the X positions. So instead of -5, I'm going to set it to 5. And I'm going to try, and we're going to swap our show and hide, since we should just have to swap our opposites. The door is a little off, and that's not how we want it, and it does follow us for a little long. Again, easy fixes. Let's show our office X to figure out where we want it to cut off, which in our case is about right here. So -45 for me. There, it disappears when it's supposed to now. Now we just need to get this X position right. So I'm going to just try setting it to 0 and see how that works out. Not quite, a little off. Let's set this to maybe -5 will work for us again. Look at that, it does. -5 works great, keeping our door where it should be. So inside of our right door, we need to then swap up a few of these. Really all we need to do is swap every left door state to a right door state. After you're finished with that, we can give it a test. All right, let's test it. Turn our light on. And we can't close the door. Turn our light off. We close the door. And we can't turn the light on until the door opens. Fantastic. Everything works as intended. So that's the door and light buttons all set up how we need them. Now we're going to create the final part of this tutorial, which is going to be our phone call. Making a phone call is pretty easy. It's honestly just adding some sound effects. If you want to record your phone call all by yourself, I recommend a software called Audacity. This is what the page looks like, and you can download it right here. It's a very basic audio editing software just to record yourself talking. If you don't want to use that, you can use a text-to-speech program. I recommend making your own. When you open up Audacity, this is what you'll see. You'll want to come to your audio setup tab and hit recording device and make sure it's set to whatever your normal microphone is. This big red button will start recording what you say. Pressing play will play it. If you can't hear it, go to audio setup, hit playback device, and make sure it's set to whatever you need it to be set to. We'll start recording what you say. I'm going to record my night 1 phone call, and when we're done, we'll come back. Once you're done recording your audio for the first night's phone call, what I like to do is make it a little bit louder. It's pretty easy. Press Ctrl A to select your entire thing, hit Effect, hit volume and compression and hit amplify, and then choose a normal decibel range. So it automatically picks one that's good for you. I'd round down. Since this is 10.78, I'm just going to say 10. It'll make it fairly loud without hopefully clipping most of your stuff. So you're going to want to then hit File and Export as a wave. MP3s are more compressed and will sound a little worse. Wave files are what you want. Hit File, Export as a wave, and then put it somewhere where you'll find it. Now you're going to want to record calls for all the rest of your nights. Once you have all your nights recorded, we're going to have to import them. I'm going to choose to import them into a mute button. So let's make a new sprite for our mute button. I'm going to call it mute button. You can design this however you want. I'm just going to do a the same way that it was done in the games. All right, here we go. Mute button. I'm going to put it up at the top corner over here. So let's design. When I receive menu screen, we're going to stop other scripts in the sprite and hide. When I receive night start, we're going to go to the position that we want it at, which is equal to 192 and 164. And then we are going to make it show, and we're going to set its ghost effect, just grabbing set color and changing it to ghost. I'm going to say to 50. Let's upload all of our calls that we added. Here are all of our calls, all set up and all ready. Now what we need to do is actually have the sound start. So I'm actually going to set up another script for that. So under night start, we're going to grab a play sound, and then we actually need to set up how it decides which one to play. We're going to use exactly the same type of code that we used to set up the night screen here. So I use night 7 call, so I'm going to change this to night, and this final one to call, and I'm going to change this middle one to night number. So night 1 call, that is the name of one of my sounds. We're just going to put it in there like that, and it'll automatically play the sound based on which night you're on. And I do want a phone ringing sound before this because it just sounds nice. So I'm going to go get one of those and I'll upload that too. All right, I'm going to add in that sound that we just got, phone ring sound. I'm actually going to make that a little quieter. I'm just going to, right up top, place the play sound phone ring until done. And then this right afterwards. Back underneath this normal when I receive night start, what we're going to do is grab a repeat until, and inside we're going to put an if statement. Inside the if statement, we're going to put an and we are going to say if touching mouse pointer and mouse down. So if we click the mute button, all we need to do is have it stop the other scripts in the sprite and then hide the mute button. If you don't mute it after the audio is done being played, we will hide the mute button.
Alright, dog, you answered, so that probably means you're in there.
I want to add a little bit of a pause and I make it sound a little bit better.
Alright, dog, you answered, so that probably means you're in there. So I don't want you...
Great, and there is our phone call. And now this will run every single night, and that's all you have to set up. Alright, that's the end of this tutorial. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked it, then please give it a like, and we'll see you next time in episode 3. Peace. Hello everyone, and welcome to part 3 of how to make a FNAF scratch game tutorial. This is episode 3, and today we will be covering the camera system and the power system. Let's get right into it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is obviously set up a way for a camera to be opened. So we're going to hover over and make a new sprite, and we're going to make the little button that we hover our mouse over to open up our camera menu. Alright, so here you can see I quickly threw together a little button. I'm actually going to make 2 costumes of this. I'm going to call this one up. I'm going to call the second one down. And for the down sprite, I'm just going to flip it vertically because when we're seeing it, to flip the camera up, we'll tap that. To flip it back down, we'll tap that. So when I receive menu screen, we need to stop other scripts in the sprite and hide. Then when we receive night start, we need to choose where it goes. I'm going to set its size to 80. I like 80, and we're going to put it directly in the center right here. Pretty close in the center. So I'm obviously going to set its size to 80, going to move it where I want it, which is going to be 0, -160, and then we are going to set its ghost effect to, I'm going to say 50, And then we are going to show it and make sure it goes to front as well. Okay, let's just check to make sure that shows up how it should. Oh my goodness, that's very loud. There it is, it's down there. Exactly where we need it. I'm going to name this sprite camera button. Then to make this look a little nicer, we can grab a repeat until and put an if else inside. Say if touching mouse pointer, set the ghost effect to 0, or else set the ghost effect to 50. And if you take a look, what that'll do is it'll make it look just a little bit nicer, something we like to see, where it's ghost effect when you hover over it. It lights up. Now let's actually set up the way for the camera to open. So inside of this if statement, we're going to need to put an if else and put mouse down to sense if it's clicking the button. We will then wait until the mouse is not down. And after making sure the mouse isn't down, we're going to make a variable called camera state. And we'll set up a few functionalities for what this can be. We're going to say camera states. 1 is going to be down, 2 will be up, 3 will be opening, 4 will be closing. Same kind of system that we're doing for the doors. So what we can do is after this clicking, we can do some checks real quick by saying if else, going to your operators and grabbing an equals, going to variables and pulling out your camera state and putting it in the first half, checking if the camera is down, so 1. Then what we need to do is switch the costume down, setting our camera state to opening, so 3. Then we can duplicate what we just made and put it in the else statement and set the if to a normal if. We'll then need to check if the camera is up, so 2, in which we'll set the costume to up and switch the camera state to 4, which is closing. Go ahead and save that. Now what we can do is start setting up how our camera is going to work. I'm going to import a camera animation, which you can find in the link in the description. After implementing that, you'll see this camera animation sprite where you will see several frames of the camera being lifted. You can feel free to adjust these frames, obviously, however you'd like. Just know that once this camera is up, you can actually see that I did keep a border around the entirety of it. Inside of this animation, we need to do when I receive menu screen, stop other scripts in the sprite, and hide. When I receive night start, we will put a repeat until down. Then we will grab an if else statement. Don't forget to throw in a show and a go to front layer right before that repeat until, where we will check inside of the if else, grab an equals and put it in, and we will check if the camera state is down or 1. And if it is, we will switch our costume to down, which if you take a look, down has no sprite at all, so it can be shown just as it needs to. Then we'll check if the camera state is up or 2. Again, you can always check by coming into your button and taking a look at the comment we made. We will switch our costume to up. If our camera state is 3 or opening, we need to set up the opening animation by switching the costume to opening 1 and then repeating however many costumes you have. Same like the door when we had the door opening and closing. In my case is 8. And putting a next costume in this repeat loop. And then switching the costume to the final opening, which is opening 9. Then we will need to set the camera state back to up, which is 2. And we will need to run a broadcast called camera up. Don't forget that at this point we need to double check and make sure it goes to the front layer, and that should be all we need for that part. Duplicate the if else again and put it underneath, where we need to make sure if it is closing, which is 4. And inside of here we will need to broadcast camera down, set our opening to opening 9, and then just like how we did with the door, grabbing a switch costume 2, putting a minus bubble inside, putting a 1 in the second bubble, and putting costume number in the first. Switching the costume to down, setting the camera state to down or 1, and you can get rid of the broadcast camera up and go to front layer. Save that and set this final if else to just a normal if, and we should be able to see this working, but keep in mind that we do need to set the camera state to 1 on night start. We hover over it, and as we click the button, the animation plays, but we see it's not in the right spot. That's easily fixable. All you need to do is set its position to 0, 0 and move that right here. You'll see the camera plays just as it should. You see when it's up, we have these borders just as we should. Everything works just as intended. Now we need to set up our camera screens. Inside of this camera kit template that you could download in the link in the description, you should also get a sprite called camera screens. Inside of this camera screen, you will get my original old designs for all of the characters. I remember Ugly having way more wrinkles than that. And this is a very inefficient way of setting up how I did this. We have way too many costumes than what we need. We can make this much, much easier. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. All I want you to do is keep in mind this blank costume, because this blank costume is what you'll need to use when you design a new camera angle. Keep in mind that when using this exact size, to not alter the size of the square, because everything inside of it will be shown. Everything outside of the square, including the black line itself, will not be visible when in use. So I'm going to redesign my cameras, and by redesign, I mean I'm going to take my stage and just use the empty versions of all of them. So I'm free to remove everything else besides the empty stages. Here we can see I now have all of my rooms, but empty. Again, if you're wanting to make more, simply duplicate this blank sprite, design what you want, and name it. Here we have our normal cameras, and I'm making this much more simple from the first tutorial, since the first one overcomplicated the camera system way more than what needed to be done. So all we need to set up is come to the coding menu and grab When I Receive menu screen. We are going to stop other scripts in the sprite and hide the sprite. When we receive camera up, we need to choose a camera number. So we're going to make a variable called camera number to keep track of where we are. By default, every time the camera comes up, I'm going to make sure the camera gets set to 1. Say when your player closes your camera, they were on camera 5, and when they open their camera, you want them to be on camera 5 again. What you can do is grab a When I Receive block and choose Night Start and set camera to 1. And then upon camera up being broadcasted, you don't have to set the camera variable at all. It'll just be what it was at when they close the camera. We're going to show the camera screens and have them go to 0, 0. We're going to then grab a repeat until, and then here I'm going to make it look like the cameras are panning back and forth. Inside of this repeat until, we are going to put another repeat until. Inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to grab a greater than symbol. If you're using my template, feel free to follow this exactly. If you're not, you'll have to mess around with these numbers and figure out what works for you. Inside, I'm going to put 56. And I'm going to go to motion and put an X position in the first bubble. Then I'm going to grab change X by block and change this by 0.5. This is going to control the speed at how fast it tilts from left to right. Then we're going to set our X position to 56, which is how far it should be, equal to this right here. Go to control and wait how long you want it to wait before it starts panning in the other direction. I'm going to say 1.5 seconds since that works for me. I'm then going to duplicate what we just made and put it underneath. In this X position, I'm going to swap this to a less than symbol and change the second number to -53. Again, if you're not copying me exactly, this number will probably be different for you. We're going to change 0.5 to -0.5, and we're going to set our X to -53 and wait another 1.5 seconds. Now we're going to duplicate the When I Receive menu screen and just swap out menu screen for camera down. Hit save and we should be able to test what it looks like. When we open up our cameras, we'll see that the camera shows as it should, and it pans back and forth. We'll fix this door glitch in a moment. You can see it pans back and forth just as we want it to. When you close it, it goes away. Let's quickly fix these door problems. Inside of your left door button, what we're going to do is inside of our repeat until, we're going to check the camera state. Put an if underneath this show and hide script, and we're going to grab an OR block and put an equals inside of it. We're going to check if our camera state is either 2, 3, or 4. This being up, opening, and closing. Remove what we just created, and instead drag this if else into this repeat until. Drag what we previously had in the repeat until and put it into the else output, and put hide into the if. If we take a look now, we'll be able to see that the door shows just fine. But upon opening up the camera, we can no longer see it. While testing around with this, you may have also noticed that even though the door button is not visible, it can still be used. To solve that problem, we're going to duplicate what we just had again. We're going to put it inside of this other night start script. Simply slide it right into the top under this first repeat, drag everything that we want into the else, and leave the top half empty. Now if we test the game, we'll see that even when the button disappears, we still won't be able to use it. But when the camera comes down, it becomes usable again. Now repeating this process is very easy. Simply grab this bit of code that we created and put it into your left door, your left light button, your right door button, your right light button, and your right door. Inside of this left door, you're going to put this only right in this follow section, where you'll grab what we put and put it into the else, and put hide in the top half. The light button is pretty easy as well. Put it in the first repeat until, move the code, and put a hide in the if. You'll want another one to put inside of the repeat until, move everything into the else, and leave the top half empty. Right door button, we've done it before. Put it in, move the code, put a hide in the top. Second half, put the loop in, move the code to else, leave the top half empty. The right light button, put it in the first repeat, move the code, put a hide in the top, put it in the second half, move the code, leave the top empty. Final door, just put it in the first forever loop, move the code, put a hide in the top. Take a look and see if that solved the problem. You can see that the doors are no longer visible and they can't be used. Now let's set up your camera's map. The camera map actually has very little code. Let's set that up real quick. We're going to create a sprite and you're just going to map out what your building looks like. Here I've quickly put together mine. As you can see, we will have the stage, the big room, the bathroom, the two halls, and the corners, and then showing where we are. You'll want to decide where you want this on your map. Usually you'll see it in the bottom corner. I'm going to put it at the top. For the code, again, it's pretty easy. When we receive menu screen, stop other scripts in the sprite, and hide. Then when we receive camera up, we will go to the designated spot that we want it. We will show it, go to the front layer, and then go backwards however many buttons you're going to have. If we count how many I'll have, I will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I will have 7 buttons that you use to transfer through the cameras. So I will move backwards 7 layers to make sure that our map doesn't come over top of our buttons. Then duplicate menu screen and do when I receive camera down. Hit save, and that's really all you need. If we take a look, we'll see that when we come into the night, and we see that when we open up the camera, the map shows where it should be. Now let's set up the camera buttons. In the link in the description with that camera kit, you should have also gotten costumes for every single button. Feel free to change them however you want. So let's make a new sprite and call it cam1 button. And I'm going to upload the 2 costumes. I'm going to have you show your camera map so that you can freely place the button where you want it to go. I'm going to say right here. Before we add in the other ones, let's quickly program what this one has to do. When I receive menu screen, stop other scripts in the sprite, and hide the sprite. Then, when we receive camera up, you'll need to go to its designated location, show, and go to the front layer. Duplicate your menu screen and switch the broadcast to camera down. Now let's set up how it actually transfers you to the correct camera. Duplicate your when I receive camera up, and remove the code. Underneath this one, you'll need to repeat until, and inside, you'll grab an if-else statement. Put an equals block inside and set the second bubble to 1. Grab your camera number variable and put it in the first half. Since this is cam1, we're checking if the camera is equal to 1. If it is, we will set the costume to on. If we are not currently on that camera, we are going to set the costume to off. Grab an if statement and put it underneath, and inside, put an and operator. Put touching mouse pointer and mouse down. We're going to sense if you are clicking the button. If you click the button, we are going to wait until you are not clicking the button, and then we can set the camera to 1, because again, we're clicking the camera 1 button. I'm going to upload a sound that I'm going to use when the button is clicked. It sounds like that. And I'm going to start the camera beep sound. That's all the code for your button. Let's duplicate the button and rename it to cam2 button. And I'm going to upload the 2 costumes for 2 and delete the originals. Inside, I'll need to decide where I want it, change the X and Y positions, change this camera number to 2, switch the costumes to the correct names, and switch the set camera to 2 as well. I'm going to do this for the remainder of my buttons. I just finished setting up all of my camera buttons by copying the same exact code as we did for 1 and 2. So taking a look at what it looks like now, and open up the camera, we can see all the buttons are where they should be. And as we click through the buttons, they switch to the colors. If I'm at 4 and I close the camera and reopen it, you'll see that we are still at 4. Let's set up the functionality so it actually looks like we're transferring through the cameras. Inside of our camera screens, we have a little bit of code to set up, but nothing hard. So upon receiving night start, what we will need to do is grab a repeat until. What we're going to want to do is order our cameras to our camera buttons. And what I mean by that is if I hide our darkness, you will see that camera 1, I want to be my stage. So we'll come into our costumes and make sure that the stage is on top. You can keep this blank here because we will still be able to work around it. 2 is going to be the big playroom, and I have that there. 3 is going to be the back room, so the third is going to be the bathrooms. 4 is going to be my left hall. 5 is my right hall. 6 is my left corner, so I'm going to drag my left corner up. And then 7 is my right corner, exactly how I want it. Now again, you'll still see that they're 1 off. Don't worry about that. You can technically have as many off as you want from the top as long as they are in order. And I'll show you how to do that. So we are going to switch costume to grab an addition symbol and put it inside and put a 1 in the second bubble. This 1 is however many costumes we have before our first camera. Since I have 1, which is this blank, 1 plus 1 is 2, which is going to be what we need. Set your camera number in there. So if camera number is 1, we are going to switch costume to 2, which 2 is really our first camera. That's really all you need to do. Switch this receive night start to camera up. Let's take a look. All right, let's open up our camera and see if it works. We're on costume 1, and that switches it to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Fantastic, and as we see, we can close the camera and reopen it, and we'll still be on the correct camera. Now, let's move on to the second part of this tutorial, which is setting up our power system. So, setting up the power should be fairly easy. In the last tutorial I made teaching you how to make a 5 Nights at Freddy's game, I gave you a download that had 100 costumes in it. That is a very inefficient way to do that, and I have a much more effective way to do that now, and this is what we'll use. In the link in the description below, you'll find a download where you can download a sprite file. That sprite file is going to be a text-based clone system, which was developed by GriffPatch, so I'm going to import that now. I actually have it in my backpack, so we're just going to drag this in here. You'll see all of this stuff in this text engine. It looks much more confusing than it is. So to start off, we can delete what it says to delete here. Then you can delete this big long one too. So what you're going to want to focus on is this block. You'll get a block called print. So if we take a look and drag out this block, we can show you exactly what it does. So print, this first bubble is what you want it to print. Say you want it to say power 95%. Then you have the X and Y value where it's going to show up. Say you want it to start at 00, you type in 00, and then you have the type. The modification of GriffPatch's text engine had added a few things. We have a glitch type, a matrix type, an appear type, a twirl type, a bounce type, a float type. So what would make most sense for FNAF is to use the appear type since it just literally makes it show up. You can mess around with any of these other ones to get some more special fun effects. So I'm going to put in here appear as the type. If we run this, you'll see that it shows it right there. It runs power and it says 95. That looks super great. A little big for our liking, right? So the size is completely controlled by the size of the actual sprite. We'll see here by default it'll be 300. That's not what we want. Let's switch it down to 100 and see how that feels. 100's a little small. I'm going to try ramping it up to 150. And there, 150 looks pretty much how I want it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show just the normal actual sprite, not a clone. I'm going to drag it where I want it. I think right there is really good. So I'm going to replace this X to -229 and my Y to 167. That you'll see is just where we placed that. I'm going to go ahead and up here put 150 as the size above this. This will set up our system for actually putting out the power. But we have to make a variable for power. So let's make a variable and call it power. I'm going to rename this text engine to the power system. When we receive the menu screen, you're going to stop other scripts in the sprite and hide. When we receive night start, we will actually begin generating how this works. On the beginning of the night, we are going to set the power to 100, since it'll obviously start at 100. We need another variable that'll calculate the power usage. We're going to set power usage to 1. The reason we're going to do this is because if you remember from a FNAF game, even if you're not closing the doors or using the lights or checking the cameras, your power will still go down. And we're going to keep our power usage at a 1 at the beginning of the night to really set up that basis of how it's going to use power. Then right after selecting the power and the power usage, we're going to set the size and print the power. The way we're going to print power is by grabbing a join block, typing power with a colon, and then we're going to grab the power variable and put it inside and put this join right in the print location. Take a look when you start up the project and hit continue. You'll see that the power just shows up right at the top, right where we want it. You'll see it's a little uncomfy and weird looking there. So what I'm going to do is duplicate menu screen, and when we receive camera up, it's going to remove this stuff. Then we're going to duplicate the night start script, and we're going to replace night start with camera down and remove the power usages and just add this in. We can make this a little better, even a little bit more efficient. If we go to my blocks and create a new block and call it update power. And update power, we're going to have just be set size and our power script. Now we can remove what we made here, put update power underneath night start, and when we receive camera down, just run update power. The power shows up when we open up the camera, it disappears. When we close the camera, it reappears, but you'll also see that does it a whole bunch, which is obviously not what we want. So underneath menu screen and camera up, you'll want to come to control and throw in a delete this clone underneath both. Now we have 9 clones, which is how many we need. When we open up the camera, they all disappear, pull it back down, and they show up where they should. Now we actually have to set up how the power decreases. Since we're using stop other scripts in the sprite, we will need to make another sprite to set up the power usage system. So let's make a new sprite and make no asset for it and call it power usage system. Inside of power usage system, we're obviously going to drag out a when I receive menu screen, stop other scripts in the sprite, and although there's no asset, I'm still going to choose hide anyways. Now we have to create a way for the power to be decreased. So what we're going to do is grab a when I receive and set this to night start. Inside of here, we're going to grab a repeat until. Now we need to decide how long it's going to take for it to decrease our power based on the usage. I think every 3 seconds is perfectly fine. However, we are free to change how that works throughout the nights. So the way FNAF works is the timer in which it decreases power actually changes throughout each night. You can set this up however you'd like. For example, if you wanted each night to be different, what you could do is put an if else in here and grab an equals. Take your night number and put it in the first half and say if your night is 1, it'll wait 4 seconds. Every 4 seconds, we're going to decrease power. So that would be changing power, come to join and put a join inside, put a dash in the first half for a negative, and then put power usage in the second bubble. Change power by negative power usage. Then say night 2 had a different way of doing it. So we do night 2, and maybe in night 2, every 3.5 seconds it decreases power. On night 3, every 3 seconds it decreases power. On night 4, every 2.5 seconds it takes to decrease power. And on night 5, the most difficult of the normal nights, every 2 seconds will decrease power. I personally think any less than 2 makes the game unreasonably unfair. So what I do is cut off your if and put an or inside. If the night is 5 or 6, then it'll wait 2 seconds and cut the power usage. For your custom night, usually what games do is the custom night actually takes the timing from night 4. You make an extra if else, put your thing in and say if it's 7, it'll be the same time as night 4. This is to make it reasonably fair. If you want to make it harder, that's totally up to you. You can do whatever you want. It's your game. I'm just saying, I feel making the power slightly easier than the previous nights on your custom night will overall make your multiple 20 mode that much better. Fantastic. There's your usage system. Now we actually have to set up how it decides what's being used. In the door sprite after the animation is finished. Right here it sets the left door state to 2, so we're also going to change power usage by 1. We're going to say this door uses 1 power every power change section. Most doors actually use a little more, so I'm going to set my doors to use 2 power. In the right door, we're going to do the same thing. When it sets the door state to 2, we're going to change, not set, the power usage by 2. Light buttons, setting the left door state to 5, we need to change the power usage. I'm going to say lights are just 1. I'd avoid using decimals because then your power text on top will be a decimal 2 unless you used a round block to round it. Come to the right light button, and where it sets the right door state, we're going to change the power usage by 1. The other thing that wastes power is your camera. So we come to the camera button, and setting the camera state to 3 and 4, that's opening and closing, we want it when it sets it to up, which happens inside of the camera animation sprite. So under set camera state to 2, we are going to change the power usage. I'm going to say that the camera also uses 1 power, so we're going to change the power usage by 1. Well, now we need a way to decrease that power usage. So I'm going to come into power usage system, and I'm going to grab a when I receive. So when I receive camera down, we are going to change our power usage by -1. So the power usage goes back down once the camera is brought down. Inside of our left door, where it resets our door state to 1, so when it resets our left door state to 1, we are going to change our power usage by -2, because 2 is how much power I decided the doors are going to use up. On the right door, once it sets the right door state back, we're going to also change the power usage by -2. Inside of the light buttons, when it sets the left door state back to normal, it should also change the power usage by -1. And same thing with the other light button. Cool, let's show our power usage as we play through the game. By default, it is 1. You'll notice that even after the time limit, the power won't go down, but that's because we haven't set it to actually show. The power is going down. So let's close the door and see how the power usage changes. You see the power usage once the door is fully closed is now at 3. And as we open the door back up, it goes back down. The light changes it by 1. If we close both doors, it goes up to 5 power usage. If we open the camera, it goes up to 2. If we close both doors and open the camera, the power usage goes up to 6. Our power usage system is working. Back to the power usage system. After each time it changes the power, we need to make a broadcast called update power. And you can put that underneath each of your change powers. Then coming into power system, we're going to brag out a when I receive, and when we receive update power, we are going to run the update power block. Let's take a look and see if it displays correctly. So every 4 seconds, we should see the power decrease just like that. Now you might notice another problem where our clones are getting dangerously high. This is a very easy fix. Under update power, we need to run a broadcast that should exist already. That broadcast being clear text, and that comes with the power system sprite that you can download in the link in the description. Now the clone should delete every 4 seconds and then reappear. Look at that, power at 99, 98. If we close our doors, it should go down by a larger amount. There it does. It should go down by an even larger amount now. Look at that, it goes down 5 because our power usage is at 5. And that's all I have for you for this tutorial. It was a little bit of a shorter one, we didn't do as much. That's because we had a little bit more of a complex system when it came to the camera. So thank you all so much for watching. If you liked it, then like it. I really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like more tutorials like this, and let me know what else kind of stuff you'd like to see. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace. Hello everyone, and welcome to the semi-long awaited episode 4 of how to make a Five Nights at Freddy's game in Scratch. Let's get into it. In this episode, we are going to be covering character movement, foxy movement, jump scares, and a 0% power jump scare. First thing I'm going to want to make is our character movement. I'm going to call it AI for the sake of understanding, but you also need to understand that this is definitely not artificial intelligence. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a sprite and call it character AI. This is where we will do all of our programming. So there's something you need to understand about Five Nights at Freddy's movement. All of the characters are based off of timers and percentages. It might sound complicated, but I'm going to explain it to the best of my abilities. First thing I want to do is make sprites for each character depending on where they're supposed to be on the map at the time. So instead of making sprites for every single character, we're just going to make one sprite for all of the characters. So I'm going to start with Ugly, my main character. I'm going to call this sprite characters on camera. I'm going to start by calling this costume Ugly. Right off the bat, letting us know what character this is. Let's map out on our camera map where our characters are all going to go. I'm going to duplicate this just so I can visualize it. So, Ugly I'll mark as a red dot. Ugly starts on the stage. After that, he moves into the party room. Then I want him to move into the bathroom, then the hallway, then the corner, and then the office. Let's go over a character, Bean Chick. If you know from my original tutorial, you know who Bean Chick is. If you don't, Bean Chick is just another one of my characters. She starts on stage. She moves into the party room. She goes from the party room straight to the hallway, from the hallway to the corner, and from the corner and to the office. Then I'm going to be using Rope Man, and now we need to cover our Foxy character, who I actually don't have a character made up for it. So until I come up with a character idea, I'm just going to be marking this guy as white. I might need to add another camera, and I think I will. So let's act like over here is where our little, quote, Pirate Cove area is going to be. So he will start here, and now because he's a Foxy character, he doesn't move through the cameras. He has two cameras he can be on. That's this one, and that's the hallway. So boom, here's our character movement sheet. Do something like this just so you can kind of understand what's going on. Nobody's ever going to see this. This is just for us to look at. But now I understand where I want everyone going. Let me design my new camera spot for where Foxy's going to go, and I'll be right back. So, one thing to keep in mind as you're designing your Foxy area is that you need to keep in mind that he goes through a few stages. He goes through the closed curtain phase, the peeking out, the really peeking out, and then when he's standing outside, and then the empty. That's 5 different stages for your Foxy area. Just keep that in mind. And with our other cameras, our characters aren't visible in the actual stage. However, for your Foxy camera, you can feel free to make Foxy visible since he's the only one that can ever be there. I have designed all 5 of my, what I'm calling, coves in reference to Pirate Cove. So, you also will see the brand new character to join the roster. We have a Cove 1, which is our empty curtains. Cove 2, got a guy kind of peeking out a little bit. Cove 3, the door opens a little more. Cove 4, he's standing right outside, and this is our new character, Bucket Boy. And then Cove 5, where he is gone, ergo running down your hallway. Fantastic. Just wanted to put that out there for when you're designing your Pirate Cove area. Do keep in mind that your Pirate Cove area will not be using the same just set camera area since there are 5 different iterations of it. We can't just have it set to a number. We'll have to choose specifically what number it's going to be based off of where our character is, which we will set up later. Back to our characters on camera sprite, we will need to design where exactly we're wanting our characters to go. So what I would recommend doing is coming to your camera screens and finding, here's the stage. So let's actually take the stage, Control C to copy it, come into our characters, and now this is going to be Ugly Stage. So that's what I'm going to name it, Ugly Stage. Spend a lot of time on your artwork, make the characters look different and unique in each frame. Just for the speed up of this tutorial, I'm going to use this picture for him over and over again, as well as the same picture for all of my other characters. Just to make this tutorial come out faster, I want you to put in so much time into your work. I want you to be proud of what you make. Here's where Ugly is on the stage, and then you're just going to delete the stage and keep him where he is. Now that we have Ugly where we want him, now we have to figure out where he goes next, which is my case, the party room. So let's come into the thing and grab the playroom. I'm gonna grab it, come into the character, make a new costume, call it Ugly Playroom, paste the playroom, grab Ugly, and put him where I think he would be in a playroom. Let's say I want him kind of chilling in the corner over here. He's kind of just hiding in the corner, hiding out, down in the corner right over there. And then, obviously, delete the playroom. And you're going to do this process for every single character. Alright, here we see here I have areas for every location for all 3 of my moving characters that are not a Foxy. So we have ugly in on stage, the playroom, bathroom, right hall, right corner. Bean chick on stage, party room, right hall, right corner. I didn't name this one right. Rope man on stage, playroom, left hall, and left corner. Fantastic. This is all you're going to need for all of your characters. Make sure you have one for every costume, and also make sure that there won't be overlapping problems. Like, my characters will never overlap on top of each other because they're in the same area if they can be on the same camera. Like, all of my stage guys, they're in a way where they won't overlap each other. You might just have some problems with that and some complications that you'll have to deal with unless you think about it right now. The way I'm going to make this system is based off of clones. I have 3 characters, therefore there will be 3 clones. The first thing we need to set up is the ability for them to appear on the cameras they're supposed to appear on. So right off the bat, let's grab our events and pull out a when I receive menu screen. Obviously, we are going to stop other scripts in this sprite, hide, and delete this clone. Since we're working with clones, you're going to want to make sure it deletes all the clones whenever it can. So upon the night being started, so when I receive night start, we need to create 3 clones. So repeat 3 times. Let's make a variable and call this I for this sprite only. This I is just going to stand for info so we can keep track of some things. We're going to set I to 0, and then in this repeat, change I by 1, and then create a clone. This will give this first clone the value of 1, which will be ugly, and then I'll do bean chick, and then I'll do rope man. Ugly, bean chick, rope man. This will be in whatever order you want. To make it easier, you can make a comment saying 1 equals your character name, 2 equals character name, and 3 equals character name, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, however many that you have, just to make it easier for you to understand. So now that's going to generate 3 clones of our characters on camera for our 3 main characters that we will be seeing move around on camera that aren't our Foxy character. So right off the bat, when we start as a clone, we obviously want to hide because we will be starting as a clone the moment the night starts. It will be impossible to have the camera up by the time these clones are made, so putting a hide at the beginning will ensure that they won't be able to be shown when the night starts. Now is where I want to get into some costume renaming. I had you name them like this before so you could easily understand where they were supposed to be. Now I'm going to set the costumes to something specific so that we can call to it in the code. So inside of our cameras, I'm going to use ugly as my example. Ugly starts on stage empty, which is camera 1, right? Camera 1 is my stage empty. 2 is my playroom. 3 is the bathroom. 4, 5, 6, 7. We can ignore 8 or whatever your Pirate Cove one is since it's not important to what we're doing, since no character can actually ever be on that screen. So 7 cameras or characters can move around. Ugly can move on 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. Let's start with 1. He can appear on the first camera. Inside of our characters on camera, we will want to name our ugly stage. Since stage is our first camera, we're going to change this to maybe the first letter or the full name of your character, whatever you'd like. So, U1. Ugly, camera 1. Playroom would be ugly 2 for me. This one would be ugly 3. Right hall is ugly 5. And right corner is ugly 7. You're going to do this for the rest of your characters as well, mapping out where they go and renaming these sprites accordingly. There we go. I've gone through and named my characters accordingly based off of the cameras that they can go to so that we can easily call to where they need to be in each sprite. Let's begin coding ugly. Underneath is when I start as a clone. What we're going to do is obviously grab our repeat until, just for the sanctity of our forever loop. Inside of this repeat until, we will start coding ugly. All of our characters will be put inside of this one repeat until. However, I'm just going to start with ugly, and then from there we can move on to the others. Inside of here, we're going to grab an if else, go to operators, and pull out an equals. So we are going to say if I equals 1, which is ugly, this if statement will cover all of our ugly information. So for now, I'll pull it out so that we can really focus on it. What we need to do is make a new variable and call it ugly location. So right off the bat, when the night starts, which camera should ugly be at? Ugly location starts at camera 1. If he started in the party room, I'd set it to 2, so on and so forth, you understand. In this if statement, we need to figure out how to set the costume. So we're going to switch costume to, go to operators and grab a join. Since all of our ugly costumes start with a U, we're going to put U in this first half, and then we're going to put ugly location in the second half. So now we can already set the location based off of where he is, and the costume switching part is done. Now we have to get it to show up at the right time. So let's come to control and grab an if else, and inside this if else we're going to throw an and inside. We're going to throw an equal in the first half, and we're going to check if camera number is equal to ugly's location. If you're on the camera where ugly is located, he will show, but only if the camera state equals 2, which if you remember, camera 2 is up when the camera is up. If the camera is down, closing or opening, he won't be able to show. Hence, if all these statements are true, we show. If not, we hide. Now, if you remember, our camera actually pans back and forth, and we have to make our character do that as well. That's very easy to set up. Make sure your character on camera sprite is the same size as your camera screens. In my case, my screens is 100, so my characters on camera is 100. After you've done that, come to motion, grab his go-to 0, 0, put it right here. The Y can stay 0, or you can set it to specifically whatever your camera screens is. My camera screens is 0, so my Y is going to stay 0, and my X is going to switch to the X position of the camera screens. So come to sensing and drag out this backdrop number of stage. You have to switch stage first since there is no X position of a stage since it's just the backdrop. So switch stage over to camera screens and you'll see it automatically switches to X position, and put that in the first half. That's all you need. Drag all this into your repeat until, and let's test and see if ugly shows up where he's supposed to be. Okay, everything's looking good. Let's open up the camera. And look at that, he's exactly where he's supposed to be. He follows the camera movement. When we close the camera, he goes away. When we open it back up, he can transfer through the camera so he hides when he's supposed to. So you might notice right here that there's a problem with our power, how it's showing up when even though it's not supposed to when the camera comes up. That's because when it updates the power, it has to re-show. Let's fix that real quick. Coming down to your power system, underneath update power, we're just going to put an if statement right around this one. The update power, not camera down, update power. You're going to check if not equals camera state not equals 2. If it doesn't equal up, then it can show. Back to our characters on camera, duplicate what we had. Now this will be bean chick, which is 2 for me. 2, and I'm switching this to B for bean chick. I'm making a new variable called bean chick location. And I'm switching all these ugly locations to bean chick locations. Fantastic. And then we're putting this right in the else of the last one. Duplicating it one more time. This one for rope man being 3. So R, make a new variable, rope man location, and set each of these, place this in the else, and then set this last if else to just an if. Don't forget then afterwards to set their locations to wherever they're supposed to be. Now we have to set up the character's movement. So if you remember, I had you make a character AI sprite. We're going to head over to that and set this up. So obviously when I receive menu screen, we are going to stop other scripts in this sprite and hide. The usual as we do for most sprites. Setting up a Five Nights at Freddy's movement system is a lot easier than you think it is. I'm going to use the system that Scott uses in the actual game, tweaked just a little bit. So just for the sake of being easy, I'm going to split each animatronic AI into its own costume. So instead of calling this character AI, I'm going to just call this ugly AI. This will get a little bit more crowded depending on the more animatronics you have. However, splitting them up like this will make the whole system that much easier. For ugly AI, we obviously need to grab a when I receive and choose night start, because when the night starts, that's when he will begin deciding how he's going to move. Each character in FNAF waits about 4 to 5 seconds before deciding if they're going to move. So what we can do is grab a repeat until and put it inside of here. Now we need to grab a wait. Wait, pick random, 4 to 5 seconds. We can make this much more specific, which I would recommend you do because then it'll stop the characters from moving at the same time. 4.01 to 5.01. This will give you a much more varied number than if you were to just do 2 whole numbers, which I definitely recommend you do. Every 4 to 5 seconds, the character is going to decide if they're allowed to move. How do we do that? It's actually pretty simple. So for ugly, we need to decide what AI number our character is going to be on for each night. Think of the AI number like the custom night, 1 through 20. So let's say for each night, night 1, we want ugly to be at 0. Ugly won't move on the first night. On night 2, he'll have 1. Very low chance. On night 3, he'll have, let's say, 3. On night 4, he will have maybe 6. Night 5, he will have 10. And night 6, he will have 12. This is his AI. Now you can keep these numbers low because the way that FNAF uses these numbers is percentage based, and I'll explain that in a second. What we're going to check is we're going to run an if statement, and we're going to say if, so we're going to grab a greater than symbol and put it inside. We're going to make a list, and we're going to call this list character AI level. I'm going to set this up in this backdrop, simply duplicate what we have here and put it underneath and change this to character AI levels. Character AI levels, we have 4 characters, so 4, and then this will act as our characters. Super simple, basic, easy to understand. On night start, what we need to do is before we even do any of this, we need to set our character's AI level. If the night number is 1, replace item 1 of character AI levels, which again is ugly, to 0, because that's what we wanted him to be. If the night is 2, we set it to 1, and if the night is 6, we set it to 12. Put this repeat underneath all that. Sets the AI level of ugly now. After it waits the 5 seconds, we are going to check if item 1 of character AI levels, which is ugly's AI level, so if ugly's AI level is greater than, pick number 1 through 20. This is how it determines whether or not it's going to move. So if the number is less than the AI number, which would be it moving, now we actually need to set up him moving. He goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 to 7. Is grab an if and say if, grab an or, and grab an equals and put it inside. This equal is going to say if ugly's location equals 1 or equals 2, then what we can do is simply just change his location by 1. The reason I'm doing this is because it's incremental, right? He goes from 1 to 3. So if he's on 1, increase it by 1, he goes to 2. If it's on 2, increase it by 1, it goes to 3. Right? Pretty easy. So just change ugly's location by 1. If ugly's location is 3, change location by 2. So what you could do really is grab an or like this and say if it's 3 or 5, change it by 2. If his location is 7, then we need to set ugly's location to whatever we're going to choose our office to be. Since 8 is a camera, I'm going to say 9 is your office. So set ugly's location to 9. We will need room to set up his jump scare, so keep this else open for when we get to that. Let's duplicate ugly's AI and call it Bean Chick AI. And all we really need to do here is switch all of these 1s to 2s and then choose new AI levels. And then here, obviously all this is pretty much the same. Setting this 1 to a 2, changing all these ugly locations to Bean Chick locations. Let's go over these again. So Bean Chick moves 1, 2, 5, 7. If Bean Chick's location equals 1, change it by 1. If Bean Chick's location equals 2, change it by 3, because 2, 3, 4, 5. If Bean Chick's location is 5, change it by 2 to get her up to 7. And if Bean Chick's location equals 7, we are going to set Bean Chick's location to 9, which again would be the office. Then it's just up to switching all these values. Fantastic. Bean Chick is now movable. And then one more time, we're going to duplicate this and call it Rope Man AI. Switching all these values to 3. Grabbing some AI values. Again, in here, we just got to change up some stuff. We're going to choose 3. We're going to set these to Rope Man locations. And then we're going to map him out. So if he's on 1, he changes by 1 and goes to 2. If he's on 2, he changes by 2 to go to 4. He'll set his location to your office. You might have noticed something. There's no way to tell if the door is closed to keep them out. They just go into the office anyways. To that, I say you're right. Let's figure this out real quick. So realistically speaking, the characters don't just appear in your office after being in the corner. They come to your door, right? Exactly. So let's call 9 the left door, and let's call 10 the right door, and let's call 11 your office. For Bean Chick, instead of going to 9, she's going to go to 10, which is the right door. meaning when you click on the light, you'll see her in the light. Ugly could work a little differently. You could have Ugly go straight to your office, which would be setting him to 11. So we could set him to come right into your office, so you really have to watch those cameras. He wants to come straight to your office, but before you let him do that, what we need to check is if your door is closed. We'll grab an if else and say if equals, so he comes from your right door. So we're going to say if your right door state equals, we need to grab an or, put it in just like this. If right door state equals 2 for closed, or I think it was 4 for closing, then we need to have Ugly backpedal a little bit. Maybe instead of going to 7, he'll just go straight to 5. He'll go back to the hallway, so he has to move back forward. And then he's willing to go back to 7 again, and then try your door again. Now let's set up Bean Chick. Bean Chick is going to go to your right door, which is 10. If you want to make a comment for these to make it easier for you to understand, go ahead and do that. 10 is our right door, which that's totally fine. If you have two characters able to come to the same door that you can see them in, then you'll have to check to make sure someone's not there. Since Bean Chick is the only one that ever appears in the right door, I don't have to do that. Now let's make another movement opportunity for her and say that if she's at the door, which is 10, and you still don't have it closed, so let's set that up real quick. So I'm going to come to Ugly's AI, and I'm actually just going to duplicate this. I'm going to take out what this says here, just so I can get this right door state, and I want to put that right inside of Bean Chick, just so I don't have to remake it. Her state is 10, meaning she's at the door, and your right door state isn't closed or closing, then she will move right into your office, 11. Else, I want her to go back to, let's say, either the stage or the playroom. So I'll say pick random 1 to 2. So she'll now go either to the playroom or back to the stage if the door is closed. Fantastic, that's all you need. Then we're gonna grab this and we're gonna put it in Rope Man, and then Rope Man has his own little bit of code to mess with. 9 is our left door. So we're going to say if he's at 9, he will have to check if the left door is closed or closing. If it is not closed, Rope Man will move right into your room, or else Rope Man will go to pick random 1 to 2. Now Rope Man can be blocked by the door as well. So now you might be thinking, well, Deku, how are we going to see her at the door when you turn the lights on? That's really easy to set up. So Bean Chick comes to the right door. So let's literally come over to our right door. I have a special sprite for when Bean Chick is there. You'd obviously want to set up a separate costume for showing her. I'm just doing eyes for the sake of it being quick and easy. Let's change this up a little bit. Instead of just saying light on our right door state, if the right door state equals 5, what we should do is put in an if-else statement. Bean Chick's location equals 10. Which is her at the light. Then we should switch the costume to light on Bean Chick. Else, just switch the costume to light on. Fantastic. Very, very easy to set up. Let's head over to our left door now and do the same thing for Rope Man. Scroll all the way down. In this left door state, pop that if else in and say if Rope Man's location is 9 or our left door, I'm going to switch the costume to light on Rope Man. Otherwise, switch the costume to just light on. This guy has a special sprite for Rope Man chilling there. And that's the system for setting up the movement of those characters. Before I go into jump scares, I do want to set up Foxy's movement. Let's hop into Foxy's AI. Let's make a new sprite and call it Foxy AI, or whatever your character is. In my case, that's Bucket Boy AI. Foxy's AI works a little bit differently, since instead of literally moving the character, he's moving on the same camera. So let's start as per usual. When I receive menu screen, stop other scripts in this sprite, and hide. We can come to, for example, Ugly AI and throw it right inside of our Bucket Boy AI for some basic little tweaks. Like, for example, setting up the AI changes. Again, he works in almost the same system, but a little bit of tweaks. So, again, every 4 to 5 seconds, he'll pick the number randomly. So let's set this to the 4, since it's Foxy's AI. So instead of a location, it's a state. So I'm still gonna call it location. So Bucket Boy location. Let's get rid of all of this and just say Bucket Boy location. When looking at the camera states, he is there for 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? He is on this camera for 4 states. The 5th state he's gone, but for 4 states, he is there. We can say If Bucket Boy's location is 1, 2, or 3, then he'll be able to move up by 1. But we have to think about this, right? 1, 2, and 3 are already things. 11 is our office, so I'm going to say 12, 13, and 14. If it's 12, 13, or 14, then it's just going to change his location by 1. So now he's at 15, which means that he is at this state, right? 12, 13, 14, 15. He's at this state right now. So he's going to move to 16, which is this. On 15, or this camera, which means the next state would be when he's running down your hallway. What we need to do is, first of all, we have to change Bucket Boy's location by 1, and then we need to start up a bit of a timer. Because the way Foxy works is once he's disappeared from Pirate's Cove, he will attack either when you check the hallway to get that running animation, or if you never check the hallway, about 25 seconds, he will hit your door. It'll take about 25 seconds. But what we're going to do is reset the timer. Scratch has a built-in timer. You'll see it that just when you start your project, a timer just starts, right? You didn't make this timer, there's just a timer. That's just how Scratch works. And when you hit reset timer, it sets it back to 0. We're gonna use this built-in timer for Foxy. So it's going to change his location by 1, setting it to 16, and then reset the timer. It's going to do one of two things. It's either going to wait until, I'm going to put an or in here. One is timer is greater than 25. If you really wanted to make it a little bit more variables, you could do pick random, bigger than 25 to 26. If you really wanted to be specific, 25.01 to 26.01 to really make it variable and feel more random each playthrough, even just slightly. Right? You're going to wait until the timer is greater than whatever set number, 25 to 26, or until the camera number equals 6. So now this brings up another issue that we have. The camera number can be 6 and your camera down. If your camera is down and you're on camera 6 and Foxy happens to move, he'll just attack you without you even looking at him. So we also need to grab an and make sure that the camera is up. So camera state equals 2, which 2 on the camera state is up. So we're looking at camera 6. So after he moves into the hallway, it'll reset the timer and wait until 25 seconds has passed, or 26 seconds, or until you look at the camera. Great, we can go ahead and hide that timer now. Before we can check if your door is closed, we need to set a little bit of a timer. Because if we just say we set it to check your door right after you check the camera, that gives you no time to see the animation and react by turning down your camera. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a wait button in here. And inside of this wait block, we're going to say we're going to wait 3 to 4 seconds to close that door is plenty. You could be a little ungenerous and say 2 to 3 seconds. So I'll do that. We'll give you 2 to 3 seconds after this timer runs out, or the camera. Check the camera. You have 2 to 3 seconds to close the door. So after this wait, then we need to check if your door is closed. So we can actually just come to Rope Man and go ahead and grab this left door state and throw it in Bucket Man, since he's going to run down the same hall that Rope Man comes down. Left door state equals 2 or 4. Then we are going to set Bucket Boy's location to either 12 or 13. Else, we're going to set Bucket Boy's location to 11, which is your office. Inside of our cameras, in this camera up section, we need to check where we are. So let's set this up. Let's say if else camera number equals 8. You can grab what we have here and just put it in the else statement, because if it's not camera 8, then it'll just do what it's supposed to do. But if it's camera 8, what we need to do is check his state. So we will say if Bucket Boy location equals 12, which is where Bucket Boy should start. So if we haven't done that, we should do this right now. So in character on screen, which is where all the other ones is, let's set Bucket Boy's location to 12 right off the bat. That's just where he begins, which is Pirate Cove doors closed. Back inside of our camera screens, the camera is 8 and Bucket Boy's location is 12. We're going to switch the costume to Cove 1. If he's at 13, we switch it to Cove 2. 14, we switch it to Cove 3. 15, we switch it to Cove 4. 16, we switch it to Cove 5. Now, we also have to think of a few other things. What about when he's in the office and it's at 11? Let's say somehow you got the camera open at that point. We really just want to make sure. So just for some double checks, we'll say if his location is the hallway, 11 for in your office, and we'll leave this blank because we may add one again. Let's set up that animation of him running down the hallway inside of our camera screens, I'm going to duplicate the hall that he runs down, and I'm going to move this down underneath everything that we have. Underneath all of our cameras is where we're going to put this so that we don't mess up our camera order. We're going to call this left hall bucket boy. I'm going to say 1 because we're going to set up this little animation. So I'm just going to take him, and again, I want you to spend a lot of time on this animation, okay? I think that looks good. 6 costumes I have for this. Let's set up right here where this is going to be. So inside of this else statement, we are going to put another if else. We're going to move this temporarily. We are going to say, and if your camera number equals, for my case is 6, which is my left hall, if camera number equals 6, and Bucket Boy's location is 16, meaning he is in the hallway. You can grab what we had here before and put this in the final else statement. We will switch the costume to Bucket Boy 1, and then repeat 5 times, because that's how many frames you have left. There's 6 frames of my animation. We set it to the first frame, and we repeat the rest of the frames, which is 5. We will say 0.01 seconds, next costume, and then we're going to forcibly force your camera down. That's what we're going to do. We're going to force your camera down. So in our camera screens, we are then going to set camera state to 4 for closing. One thing I noticed is that camera 6 is actually my corner. 4 is my hallway. That's what I want to look at. I have a running sound that I have prepared. So inside of here, I'm going to import a new sound. Here it is. So I only need about 3 of these. So I'm going to choose these 3 steps, and I'm going to have it at the beginning of this animation start playing the sound. Another thing you may not know about Foxy is that when he gets to your door and pounds on it, you actually lose power. I don't know if you knew that. Let's set up how that's going to work. Inside of Bucket Boy's AI, way down here, after he sets this, before he does that, what we're going to do is actually upload a sound of him pounding on the doors. So I have one of these. I like it a lot. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. We are going to start the sound, Bucket Boy knocking. Depending on how many times he's banged on your door will change how much power he steals. For example, the first time he pounds on your door, you lose 1 power. Every time after that, you actually lose 6. So we're going to use our fancy background info. So let's change this to 2. And the second one is going to count how many times Foxy has knocked. So we'll do Bucket Boy pounds. Up here, we can do when I receive night start, inside of Bucket Boy AI, replace item 2 of background info with 0. Down here, we will say if equals item 2 of background info equals 0, meaning he's pounded 0 times, we will change our power by -1. Else, we will change the power by -6. Now he will take away the power that he needs to. Inside of Bucket Boy's AI, I have him setting the camera to 6, which is my corner, when in reality it should be 4, which is my hallway. There's another thing you probably know about Foxy, and that's when you're checking the cameras, he won't move. That's also very easy to set up, and let's set that up right now. Basically, whenever you have a camera on, Foxy goes into a state that we're going to call locking. So let's make a variable and call it Bucket Boy locked, with, I'm going to say, a question mark. So after we make Bucket Boy locked, we're going to come to Bucket Boy AI, and we are going to say that upon night start, so when I receive night start, repeat until, forever loop, camera state equals 2, which should be up, we will set Bucket Boy locked to 1, which we'll say means yes. Else, we'll set it to 0, which means no. Then, right in this repeat until, what we will say is we will grab an if statement and put it right underneath this wait until. Inside of this if statement, we are going to check if Bucket Boy locked equals 0, meaning he is not locked. If he is locked, he will never be able to move as long as our camera is up. And that's really all there is to it. There's your Foxy AI all set up. Congratulations, you've gotten through, hands down, probably the hardest part of this whole tutorial. And it wasn't even that hard, was it? Fantastic. Now let's set up the fun parts that everybody likes making, that being the jump scares. What I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you make one sprite, and we're going to call this sprite jump scares. In this one sprite, I want you to animate every single character jump scare there is. And once I'm done with that, I'll be back. Alright, I've very quickly and sloppily threw together all the jump scares for all of my characters. I highly suggest you spend way more time on yours. Don't just do what I did and put one picture and zoom it in or shake it back and forth. I highly suggest you try to learn and practice some animations to make your character's arms move or something like that. Something to really characterize your game, because let's be honest, the jump scares are probably what's going to be most memorable in your game, unless you're doing some crazy cool, never before seen mechanics. So spend a lot of time on your jump scares. Again, I'm doing it lazily just for the sake of this tutorial. So once you get all of your jump scares put in, what I want you to do is go to the first frame of each jump scare and name it. I'm naming it U for ugly, the first frame of Bean Chicks is B, the first frame of Rope Man's is R, and the first frame of Bucket Boys is BB, right? Just so it's easy to find while we're coding. Inside of these jump scares, before we even do anything, we actually have to set up the jump scare. Where would jump scares happen? Obviously, 1 is in the AI, when the characters are in your office. 11 is your office, right? That's pretty easy. Everybody knows that. So, when he's in your office, he's not going to jump scare you immediately. What happens is, when they're in your office, they actually wait a little bit before choosing to jump scare you. Duplicate what we have here and say if ugly's location equals 11, which is the office. Then, instead of changing a location at all, what we're going to do is we're going to make something new in our background info. And we're going to call 3 character jump scare. Character jump scare. Which character is jump scaring? So in Ugly's AI, the Ugly's location is 11 at the time of switching. We will need to first replace item 3 of background info with Ugly, which is, I'm going to call 1, right? 1. And then we need to broadcast a jump scare. So let's broadcast jump scare. Jump scare is going to stop a lot of things. So we're going to duplicate this menu screen and have this changed to jump scare. Since some things use clones, I'm also going to have you throw a delete this clone underneath. Let's go over each thing that needs to disappear when a jump scare happens. I want the fade to disappear. I want any static to disappear. I want the office to disappear. I want the darkness overlay to disappear. I want the door buttons. I want the doors. I want the light buttons. We want pretty much everything that you've been seeing inside the game to disappear for how we're doing these jump scares. Camera button, we need that to disappear. If we're in our camera, we need that stuff to disappear. We need our camera screens to disappear. We need our camera map to disappear. Each of our camera buttons, we need them to disappear. Everything to disappear. That's why I suggest in your jump scares, putting a background on your jump scares. You see, if you looked at mine, my backgrounds have just a gray backdrop here. I suggest doing that. We want our power system to disappear, the numbers for the power system. We want the power usage to stop doing what it's doing. We want the background music to stop doing what it's doing. We want the characters on the screen to disappear. We want, our characters' AIs to stop working. Fantastic. Now everything will stop once jump scare is broadcasted. Let's grab this little bit of code that we made for Ugly and put it into Bean Chick, put it into Rope Man, and put it into Bucket Boy. Inside of Bean Chick, we will put the Ugly location here, set this to Bean Chick location, set that to 11, replace item 3 with 2, because 2 is my Bean Chick, and jump scare. Rope Man, same thing, put him down here, switch Ugly location to Rope Man location. Rope Man is characterized as 3, and jump scare. Inside of Bucket Boy, and say, if Bucket Boy's location is 11, Bucket Boy is characterized by 4, and jump scare. There we go. All the jump scares there can happen. Inside of jump scares, we can start doing stuff. When I receive menu screen, stop other scripts in this sprite, and hide. Very basic stuff. We've seen it several times before. Now we need to say, when I receive jump scare, we need to check who's jump scaring us. So we will grab a if statement and put an equal sign inside and say if item 3, because we're figuring out who's jump scaring us, of background info is 1, that's our Ugly jump scare. So we will switch our costume to U, and let's count how many we have after. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then we will repeat 5 times next costume while waiting 0.01 seconds just to make that animation not as quick and snappy. Then we need to set up our game over screen. Pretty basic stuff. Then we will switch our backdrop to game over. After we hide our jump scare menu, we will have it wait however many seconds. I say 5 seconds on the game over screen is good. And then we will broadcast menu screen. That's all you need to do. Let's duplicate this and say if it's 2, which is Bean Chick, we'll say go to B. Let's count. After B, she has 1, 2, 3, 4. So repeating 4 times. Game over. Fantastic. Duplicate again. 3, which is my rope man. Let's put him in here. Rope man. And rope man has 4 afterwards. And then finally we have 4, which is bucket boy. And bucket boy has 4. Great. Look at that. Now we need to make a jump scare noise. You can take someone's jump scare noise or you can record your own. I think recording a different jump scare noise for each character is really good. Then, above our ugly jump scare, once the jump scare begins, we can start the sound. Don't do plain tell. Do start sound, ugly jump scare. Start sound, bean chick jump scare. Start sound, rope man jump scare. And start sound, bucket boy jump scare. Fantastic. Throw it in there, and our jump scares are actually completely ready. So let's start by having this go to the front layer and showing. Awesome. We have one more thing left to set up in this episode, and that's running out of power. This is super, super easy to set up. So let's figure it out right now. What we're going to do is come to our power usage system sprite. And right above all of this that we set up here, what we're going to do is run an if statement. We're going to say, if our power is less than 1, meaning 0, then we will need to broadcast a power outage. Let's make a broadcast and call it power outage. And let's put this right above all of that stuff. Power outage is another very, very, very important thing. Just like jump scare, we're going to duplicate this and say power outage. What goes away during the power outage? We need a few things to happen. First of all, I will set our camera state to closing. Camera state, set it to 4 so it closes. So it doesn't just look like it disappears. We want it to close, right? Power outage, what needs to happen here is we need to make static disappear. We need to keep the office, obviously, keep the darkness overlay, keep the buttons, but we can get rid of like the mute button. Not that that would ever be seen. Camera screens from showing. Stop the camera maps from showing. Stop every single button from doing what the buttons are supposed to be doing. Stop the actual power system from working. Stop the AIs from doing anything. We don't want the AIs to do anything. We don't want the characters that move through the cameras to be doing anything. Fantastic. That's about it for that, for making the camera not to work. Now for some special effects. For example, in the darkness overlay, what I like to do is say, when I receive power outage, I want to set the ghost effect to maybe 30 so that it makes it appear darker. So what we can do here is switch our 50 in this repeat until, put it out of the repeat until, just so that when the power goes out, the darkness will look darker. It'll look like we ran out of power, right? Now, our doors are still going to work. Is inside of our left door button, let's make an if statement. We're going to check a greater than and say, if power is greater than 0, if it's bigger than 0, all this stuff is going to work. Obviously, if power is greater than 0, we want it to work. So underneath this, what we can do is put this power 0 right around this touching mouse pointer and mouse down. And we're going to put this inside of left light, right door, and right light. Again, put this around just the mouse pointer and mouse down area of the code of each of the buttons. Don't forget to save. Then if the doors are closed, we also have to force them open, right? So what we'll do is we'll say, when I receive power outage, you'll check if left door state equals closed, so 2. If left door state equals 2, then we will set the left door state to 3. Opening, so that it forces the door open. Still plays that animation just how we want it to. If the left door state equals 5, light on, we're going to set the left door state to 1, just open, just so it shuts the light off. We're then going to take what we have here and put it into our right door button and do the same thing here, just switching out left door for right door states. Now this camera button, we also need this to hide, so make sure that you've put in the power outage, stop with description, the sprite, hide, delete the clone in the camera button too, so you can't reopen your camera up afterwards. So inside of our left door button, when we receive the power outage, we want to switch the costume to door off. Same thing with right door, switch costume to door off underneath power outage. Inside of this power system, underneath power outage, instead of doing this, what I'm going to choose instead to do is to set our power to 0 and then update our power. Just so that instead of disappearing, it'll just say that our power is 0. This will prevent our power from looking like it's a negative number, which is exactly what we want. Now we have to set up a system for ugly to come and jump scare you after your power has ran out. This is extraordinarily easy to set up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new sprite specifically for this. And I'm going to say power outage jump scare AI. Again, I'm using AI for the safety of understanding. This is most certainly not artificial intelligence. When I receive menu screen, we are going to stop other scripts in this sprite and hide. When I receive power outage, we'll need to do a few things. We will need to wait however long it takes for the character to come to the door. Let's make it random. Let's say it'll take 2 to, let's say, 20 seconds, because 20 seconds is the maximum in FNAF. 2 to 20 seconds. If you want to make it a little more specific, you can do 2.00, you can do 2.01 and 20.01 to make it even more specific and have those numbers just like that. It'll need to start playing that music. I'm going to make a quote music file. It's really just going to be him like laughing and giggling, so I'll be right back after that. All right, here's my disgusting file. Instead of music, I'm going to use this. Yeah, it's really gross. So we're going to wait 2 to 20 seconds for him to come to your door. And then it's going to start sound ugly noises. Then I'm going to wait another 2 to 20 seconds, where at that point I'm going to stop all sounds, and we are going to broadcast the jump scare by replacing item 3 of background info with 1, right? The jump scare, and the jump scare being 1, which is ugly. And then broadcasting jump scare. Fantastic. Now we have a power outage system. Inside of the power usage system, right above this repeat until, just throw in a set power to 100. That's all I have for this episode for you. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, then like it, and I'll see you all in the next tutorial. Bye! Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 5 of the How to Make a Five Nights at Freddy's tutorial in Scratch. Let's get started. This is episode 5, and today we are going to be covering custom night and your stars on the menu. So let's get started. First thing we're going to need to do is obviously create a new button for our custom night. For that, I'm just going to duplicate our new game button and call it custom night button. Come into costumes, and we're going to name it custom night. Kind of stretch out the button a little bit. Center it. And then I'm going to grab the X. Going to delete these. Keep the no action. Duplicate our custom night. And we have to get that X back. Cool. Upon showing up, we have to figure out where on screen we want the custom night button to appear. I think right here will work perfectly fine. So get on menu screen, we got to make sure it's going to the correct position. No mouse, and then if we see, just fine. Fantastic. Now we have to decide what happens when we click it. So when we click it, we don't want any of these night things to start, right? Don't want them to start. So we'll hold these off and throw them away. Instead of a broadcast to a fade, we don't want to broadcast a fade. All we want to do is set it to no action and stop the script. And then we will need to make a broadcast for the custom night screen. So let's go to our events tab. Grab a broadcast and change this broadcast to custom night screen. You can also feel free to hide it. Fantastic. Change this night screen, or keep the night screen, because that's what we need. And then also grab another one just in case and do custom night screen. You don't really need two since it says it here. This is just kind of an in case. Now we need to actually create the custom night screen. So I'm just going to duplicate our menu screen like we've been doing. Move it all the way down underneath game over and call this custom night screen. Change this text to say custom night. And I'll put it in the middle, make it seem a little bit nicer. And now here comes the fun part, something that you might find enjoyable, actually designing the custom night. So what I'd recommend doing is making a black box with an outline and no fill. Make the square for it, for each of your characters. I'll put them like right here. Make one, make another. Whoop, don't move the background. And I'll make one more. There. Spacing's a little uneven. We'll grab them then all, center them. Just like that. I have 4 characters. You might have more. You do this as many times as you'd like. I did forget. Moving these guys down a little bit. I'm going to put their names above their heads. I'd encourage you to do the same. Okay, fantastic. Now, the backgrounds I'd recommend making a slightly brighter color. So for this fill, you can do a light gray with no outline and make sure it lines up with the squares. Duplicate them and put them on top of the squares. Okay. Then grab every single square by holding down shift and clicking each one, and then moving them backwards until they are behind the lines you made. This one hasn't done it. There. Now you've separated the background of the box from the actual outline, and that will make sense why in a moment. Now we have to throw the characters inside, actually. So I'm going to come to my camera screens, and I'm just going to grab my character. I'm going to grab Ugly, come to the custom night screen. I'm going to paste Ugly in. I'm going to shrink him down. I'm going to put him inside of this box. I guess I should put him inside of Ugly's box, shouldn't I? Like this. I'm going to group him just in case. Then you're just going to move him backwards up until he's in front of that gray box, but he's still below the outline. So there he is. And then I'm going to do that with the rest of them, and I'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. So this is what I got it looking like. Everything looks great. I think it looks fantastic. Now we're going to work on adding in the arrows. So we're going to make a new sprite and call these custom night arrows. And for this, I'm just going to make this a slightly lighter gray box with no outline. And we're going to put an arrow in there. You can do that just by using the pixel font and using a less than or greater than symbol to make the arrow. Perfect. You're going to duplicate this. Well, let's name it left, duplicate it, name it right, and just flip horizontally to get that left and right arrow in the same sprite. Now, let's figure out a size that we like. This is too big, I feel. So I will switch this to maybe 50. 50 looks nice. We could probably go a little bit higher, 60. Let's go with 60. I like 60. So now I have to figure out where each of these arrows go. So I'm going to start with a left arrow on here, and then I'll do, so the way I'm going to set it up is left arrow, right arrow, left arrow, right arrow, left arrow, right arrow, left arrow, right arrow. Set it up however you want. I think that's easier for me though. So let's put this left arrow where we need it. I'll say right here. lines up pretty well, but is in just a little bit. That's how I like it. So let's start this. So in events, when I receive menu screen, we will hide, stop other scripts in the sprite, and delete this clone. Since we are going to be cloning this arrow, so the delete this clone needs to be there. Then we will say, when I receive custom night screen, we will run a block called generate arrows. Click run without screen refresh and click OK. Put generate arrows right underneath, and now we will define what generate arrows does. The reason why we put it in a block like this is because it'll run without screen refresh and you won't watch every arrow show up. They'll just all appear at the same time. Underneath generate arrows, we will need a variable. Let's make a new variable for this sprite only called I. And we will set I to 0. In our control tab, we will grab a repeat. So we have 4 characters, 2 arrows each. 4 times 2 is 8. So repeating 8 times. We will set I, we will change I by 1 and create a clone of myself. Then, when I start as a clone, we will check what costume you are. If I equals 1, which is our first left arrow on Ropeman, exactly where we want it, we will go to the position that it's at and switch its costume to left. You'll duplicate it again. If I is 2, we will now set up the new location. I'll say right about there. Yep. Negative 143. Right. Duplicate it. 3 and 4. 3 will need to be right about here. Yep. Negative 95. Left. 4. Right about here. Duplicate again. 5 and 6. 5 is going to be right about here at 24. The other here at about 97. And then there's 2 more sets. You can set this last if else to just an else. 7 and 8. 7 will be right about at 143. And 8 will be right about at 215. And then right after all of this, you'll just hit show. Let's hit the green flag and see what it does when we go to custom night. Ah, nothing happens. Okay, so we forgot to actually set the normal things on screen to go away. So on title screen ugly, we'll duplicate this. On newspaper, hit custom night screen. Grab this, we'll drag that into the new game button. We'll drag it into the continue button. And that's all we should need to drag it into. Let's take a look. Hit custom night. There we go. The arrows show up, but we're on the wrong backdrop. So in our custom night button, we will switch the backdrop to custom night screen. Try again. And there we go. It shows up how it should. Now we have to get the numbers for every character. This part's really easy. We're going to create a new sprite. We are going to call this custom night numbers. Just going to make this are pretty close to white. going to go back to our sans serif. We're just going to type every single number and center it. And name each sprite as we go. All the way up to 20. I'll be back once this is done. Okay, here I have every single number from 0 to 20. You'll see that my 20 isn't perfectly centered, but that's alright because my 0 is. So, now, while in the custom night screen, I'm going to just hide the static so that I can move these numbers where I want them to be. I'm going to use 20 as the actual number because I want 20 to be centered when it's in the middle. So let's figure out where all these numbers need to go. 20 looks good right there. Now we can start the custom night number code. So in events, we'll grab when I receive menu screen. As per usual, we will stop other scripts in this sprite, hide, and delete this clone. Now we will need to say when I receive custom night screen, and we will generate the numbers, just like the buttons. Generate numbers, tick run without screen refresh. Generate numbers, and now we will define what generate numbers does. Generate numbers, we will need a variable called I, that is for this sprite only. We will set I to 0. Grab a repeat. This time there's 4 characters, 1 number per character, so 4 times. We will set I, change I by 1, and create a clone of myself. When I start as a clone, you'll grab these ifs, say if equals 1, meaning if I equals 1, we will go to the position we want it to go to. Then, if it's 2, we have to regenerate where it's supposed to go. I think right there looks just fine. Negative 63. Move it to the next one. 55. And uno más, 1 more. 175. Set this last if else to just a normal if because we don't need any more. And then show. And we will need to switch costume to whatever their AI levels are. So, what we will need to do is run some more ifs. We're going to put a repeat until underneath, and then we will grab a switch costume to. Switch costume to item, come to variables, grab I of character AI levels. So if it was 2, it'd be 0, but you know, it'd change every time. If you want something for fun, you can have it randomly generate the numbers each time, just by coming underneath this when I receive custom night screen. You can say set, oh, not set, this is not a variable. You would say replace item 1 of character AI levels with pick random 1 through 20. And then you can do this with every other character. And then after that, you can generate the numbers, just for some fun. Let's take a look and see how it looks. Custom night, boom, it sets each character to a random number, and you can see those numbers. Generate it again, generate some more random numbers. Bam, super fun, just like that. So, now what we need to do is actually make sure that the arrows do something. So come to custom night buttons, and underneath this show, we'll grab a repeat until and put it underneath the show. Inside of this repeat until, we will check if say if we are touching mouse pointer and the mouse is down, then we will wait until not mouse down. Once that is done, we will have to check which arrow we're actually touching, right? So we will say an if else, and check if I equals 1, which is Rope Man's left arrow, we will have to replace item 1, Rope Man is 3. We checked here. This is why we write these kind of comments, so we can always come back and check what our lists mean. So our first character on the custom end is Rope Man, and Rope Man is our third AI number. So replace item 3, replace Rope Man AI levels with, grab a minus, and say item 3 of AI levels, right, which is Rope Man, minus 1. Okay? But first we have to check if not equals, so we'll check if Rope Man's AI level is not 0. Right? Because if it's 0, we can't set his AI level to -1. We have to set it down to 0 as the smallest. So if it's not 0, we will change it by -1. If it is 0, we will not change it by -1. We'll duplicate what we made. And if I is 2, or Rope Man's right arrow, then we'll have to check if his AI is not 20, since we're increasing his number, because it can't go above 20. And that will just be changing this minus to a plus. There you go. Duplicate that what we have there. Change this to 3 and 4, which is Bean Chick. Bean Chick is number 2. So switch all these 3s to 2s, and switch all these 3s to 2s, and that's all you need to do. There's Bean Chick. Duplicate it again. This is 5 and 6, which I made ugly, and ugly is 1. And then one more time, duplicate this. Set this final if else just to an if. And make 7 and 8. Bucket Boy, which is 4 for me. So switch all these 1s to 4s. Fantastic. Let's go in and see if the arrows work. As we can see, they do not work currently, so let's figure out why. So I found our problem. Inside of our custom night numbers, we just said to set it to I. Well, if 1 is supposed to be Rope Man, because that's where he is, we know that 1 is really ugly, and that's where our problem is coming from. At least one of our problems. So the way we can fix this is by grabbing an if else and saying if equals 1, if our I equals 1, then we will switch costume to item 3 of the AI levels, because 1 is supposed to be Rope Man, but 1 is really 3 on the AI levels. Duplicate it. If it's 2, Bean Chick, we know Bean Chick is 2. If it's 3, we know that is Ugly, which is 1. And if it's 4, we know that's Bucket Boy, which is 4. So that solves one of our issues of our numbers not actually displaying correctly. Boop. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have here. If we look right now, we will see that every number is still not quite correct. You can see that Rope Man is supposed to be 13, but he's listed as 12. So, as you can see, our issue is that every time we generate a number, we'll see that Rope Man is supposed to be 17, but he's 16. This is because that our numbers, this is because that if we want to say to set the number to 17, let's look at what costume 17 is. 17 is actually the number 16. All we have to do to fix this is grab an addition symbol, put our character AI in the addition symbol, and put a 1 in front of it. Duplicate that into every single one. Perfect. Now let's take a look. We can now see Rope Man is 17, 17, Bean Chick should be 10, Ugly should be 20, Bucket Boy should be 5, and they are. And if we interact with these arrows, you will see that they do what they should do. 0 is the lowest, and as I click, I can't go any lower. 20 is the highest, and as I click, I can't go any higher. You should see that that's the same for all of the characters. Fantastic. And that also automatically sets their AI level. Let's move on to the next part. The next part is actually putting up the Start Night button. This is really easy. We're going to duplicate our new game button and say Start Night button. Again, it's just about changing what these say. So Start Night. Extend this out a little bit. Fantastic, here we go. Let's get into the custom night screen so we can see exactly where we want this button to show up. So the button, I'll put it down in this corner right here. Just like that. And now let's set that up. So since this button does not appear on the menu screen, we actually want this menu screen to stop at the description of the sprite and hide. And then the custom night screen is what actually makes it show up and go to its position that we want it to go to. There we go. Upon clicking it, we will set the night to 7, since that is our custom night. And then if we look at 1 of background info, reason for fade, we don't even need 1, since we are not going to be fading. We're just going to be cutting right to the continue. So if you look at our continue button and how that works, it broadcasts us right to the night screen. So that's all we have to do. Set the night to what we need it to, and say broadcast night screen. Don't forget to save. Alright, now let's think about what needs to be deleted upon night screen. Right here we have night screen. I'm going to add a delete this clone to it. Night screen will have to be put on our custom night arrows and our custom night numbers so that all of the costumes and clones get deleted. Fantastic, let's go in, hit the green flag, hit custom night. Let's set all of our characters to 20, 20, 20, 20, and see what happens as we play the night. We hit start night, night 7, and we can see in here that they will be on the move. Look at that, they're all moving at lightning speeds. Look at that, they're all moving just as they should. Everyone's where they should be. And soon they'll be at the door and going crazy just as we planned it to be. Fantastic, there is our custom night all set up actually. However, I know you want some more fun stuff in our custom night, so let me show you how to set up some fun minigame modes, just like from Five Nights at Freddy's 2. We will need some more arrows. So, what are we going to have these arrows for? Well, let me explain. So, I'm going to hide this, and we're going to make some more arrows. So, these arrows are going to be down here, where you'll be able to scroll through and look at custom minigame modes. So, I'll make these arrows a little bit bigger. Well, no, I won't. So, we need to make 2 more arrows, so we'll change this repeat to a 10. I'll set this final if statement back to an else, and duplicate this, change this to 9, and I want 9 to be right here. Maybe move it down just a little bit. So let me set that up, -44 and -158. Facing left, and then 1 more, and I'll block this one off to a normal if. 10 to face right. I want it way over here. At 226, -158. Cool. If we check that, see that those arrows appear where they should. Fantastic. So, now we need to set up what these arrows do. We have to come up with some minigame modes. So I'm going to create a new sprite and call this custom night mode names. And now we will come up with some mode names. We could do one and call it the rope night. We can make this text pretty big. Well, maybe not too big. Center it and put it down here, right in between the arrows. And rope night could be the letters in rope changed to numbers. So I'll call this rope night. So let's start coding. When I receive menu screen, we will stop other scripts in the sprite and hide. When I receive custom night screen, we'll switch the costume to rope night, and we will go to 94, -159. Okay, so let's set up how this will be figured out. So we will obviously need this text to show, of course. We will need to make a variable that tells us which mode we are currently selected on. So let's make a variable and call this custom night mode. Upon a custom night screen, we will need to set the custom night mode to 0. Ergo, when we start, there's no custom night mode selected. So let's actually set this first one. Let's actually set this first costume to no mode. Set the second one to rope night. No mode will not have. No mode will simply have the word custom. No mode will simply have no words inside of it. Great. We will need to switch the costume to custom night mode, which if it's 0, again, doesn't exist. So make sure you grab a plus and put 1 inside of it. Fantastic. We're going to move the go to and the show above the switch costume and put a repeat until inside of around the switch costume too. Let's go into the custom night arrows and set up what these should do. Open up this last if to an if else, and I'll make a new I. If I is 9, meaning this arrow right here, we will need to check if not custom night mode equals 0. Custom night mode 0, we will make say custom. Back to our arrow. When this arrow this left arrow here is clicked, we will need to check if custom night mode is not 0. If it is 0, or if it is not 0, then we will need to change the custom night mode by -1. Duplicate this and close off this if else. If it is 10, we will need to check if custom night mode is not whatever the maximum number of your custom nights are. So let's make all of our custom nights real quick. So we have the rope night. I'll make the bean night. I can't do the ugly night since U is a pretty low letter of the alphabet. I actually don't know. Is U higher than 20? Let me check. Yeah, it is. U is higher than 20. But what we could do is just set U to 20. So the bean night, the ugly night. Make sure you're centering all of these, by the way. The ugly night. I'm going to do the all 5s, let's say. All 5s. Let's do an all 10s. And all 15s. And all 20 mode, we're just going to obviously call 420 mode. I'm going to make a few more just for fun for people that actually end up playing this game, because I know some of you weirdos will and will 100% it because you're weird. Let's make a husband and wife mode. It's a little big. I could just say husband wife. Husband wife. Brother's night. The bros. And yeah, I'll make these the nights. I'll make these all of the nights. I'm gonna move 420 mode to the end since it's the hardest one. Okay, cool. So 11 is my highest mode. So in our arrows, we will obviously need to set custom night mode if it's not 11. Then we'll change the custom to 1. Or by 1. Cool. And then obviously upon touching these, we'll actually need to set the numbers, right? So we will create a block called set custom night numbers. Run it without the screen refresh, and put this underneath both of these. So this is where we will define what each night actually does. So if we have a custom, so if we have the rope night, okay, so if equals 1, if our custom night mode equals 1, that is rope night, we will need to set these numbers accordingly. So I'm going to put them in order. So I'm going to replace character levels, place. So 3 is first, then 2, then 1, then 4, because of just how I have them laid out here. I'm gonna put them in like this. So I only do figure out which each of these are. So that'll set Rope Man to 18, Bean Chick to 15, Ugly to 16, and Bucket Boy to 5. Second night that we came up with is the Bean Night. which would set Rope Man to 2, Bean Chick to 5, Ugly to 1, and Bucket Boy to 14. The third night is Ugly Night, which would set Rope Man to 20, Bean Chick to 7, Ugly to 12, and Bucket Boy to 20 as well. Then we came up with, I think, all 5. Is this where I started doing alls? Yeah, this is. So all 5s really just sets them all to 5. All 10s sets them all to 10. All 15s sets them all to 15s. Okay, and then the next one isn't all 20. The next one is actually, what am I doing? Husband and wife. Husband and wife. Which is these two at 0 and these two at 15. Or should I raise them up more? Let's raise them up both to like... Let's set Bean Chick to 18, Ugly to... no, let's set them both to 20. Bean Chick and Ugly to 20. Then the next one is Brother's Night, or the Brother Night, which sets Rope Man and Bucket Boy to 20. Husband, wife. Oh, wait, I didn't set this to the right name. Brother's Night. The Bros in 420 mode. Okay. That's Brother's Night. Then we have the Bros, which adds Ugly. And then finally, you have all 20 mode. Yeah, all 20 mode. And that's the last one that I have made. You can make a bunch more, have a lot of fun with it. More characters, the more stuff you can do, but you know how it goes. So there, that'll set all of their numbers every time you press one. But now we need to have it set back to custom when you mess with a number, right? So in each of these, we will just have you set custom night mode to 0. And just put these in each of these first normal replaces, like when you're setting the numbers yourself. Just like this. Except in 9. Cool, if we take a look, see it's custom, we change it. Rope Night, it sets them all. Bean Night. Ugly Night. All 5s, all 10s, all 15s. Husband and wife. Oh, husband and wife is backwards, actually. Husband and wife is backwards. Should be these middle two. Brother's Night. Ooh, what are we missing? All 15s. And then it's husband and wife. 8. 8 is husband and wife. Ooh. Oh, here's where I messed up. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, there we go. Let's try that again. Okay, custom Rope Night, Bean Night, Ugly Night, all 5s, all 10s, all 15s, husband and wife, Brother's Night, the Bros, and 420 mode. And it goes back to custom, so we'll have to do something about that. Well, that doesn't really super matter too much. Custom, then way at the end is also custom. But if you got the Bros and you change one, like this one can't be changed, so it doesn't matter. But if you add Bean Chick, it sets your thing to custom. Fantastic. Now you have a bunch of fun modes that autocomplete for players. The next logical step would be to add your star system. So let's set up the stars. First thing we need to do is actually make a star. So let's come in here and let's say stars. So you can upload a picture of a star. You can like upload a costume. You can choose a costume. Let's see if Scratch actually has a good star. I don't have one picked out. That's a really bad star. That's a terrible, awful star. I'm gonna be real. Very bad star. So what we can do is, let's say I just grab like a copy paste star symbol. Does that work? It does. Okay, cool. Found it. Okay, cool. And I'll just set this to like a yellow, like a star is. Okay, cool. There's my star. So we obviously want stars in the menu, right? I'll put them up here. Right, star. So you get a star. So let's go over what stars you can collect. We're gonna make a whole list for this. So let's make a list called stars collected. Okay. Inside of stars collected, let's go over the stars. We obviously want a night 5 star, night 6 star, and then what are the other stars we want? We want, and these are menu screen stars. People have custom night stars, but we want menu screen stars. We could have a star for completing 420 mode, as well as having another one inside custom night, and then a final star for beating every single mode. I think that could be fun. So 4 stars total. Let's in here, copy this, and change character eye levels to stars collected. Stars collected, there happens to be 4, so that stays the same. We just have to rename these. So I'll rename 1 to 5th night, 2 6th night, 3 420 mode, and 4 all custom modes. Look at that. So there we go. Now, let's change how this works. Inside of our stars sprite, we will need to grab a when I receive menu screen. We will have to check some stuff. We will say if equals just say if item 1 of stars collected equals 1, meaning we have the star. Also, I'm going to keep this an if. Then we will go to wherever we need this to go. Mine is 152 and 158. And create a clone of myself. Then we need to decide how far the next one's going to be. So 10, 20, 30. 30 spaces looks just fine. So that's cool. Then we need to check if item 2 of stars collected is 1. If it is, go to here and create a clone of myself. 1, 2, 3. Go inside of here. If 3 is 1, go to -92 and do the same thing. And then the final one for the 4th star is -62. Because you won't be able to collect the second one unless the first one is collected. Because the 6th night can't happen until the 5th night happens. Custom night, right, 420 mode can't happen until the 6th night is beaten. And all of them can't happen until 420 mode is beaten. So doing it like this, it'll ensure that you can only get 1 star at a time. And that you can't unlock like the 3rd star here and not the first one, because it's just not possible. Then afterwards, obviously, show. Fantastic. I'm going to come to the new game button, and I'm going to grab night screen right here, and I'm just going to add a delete this clone to it. And we're going to drag this to the stars. Grab this night screen. We're going to duplicate it and say, if we receive the custom night screen, they're also going to do that. And if we receive fade, they are also going to do that. Well, no, we don't even need that for fade. Let's take a look. We join in. There's 1 star showing. I suppose this shouldn't actually be underneath here. It should be when I start as a clone, you show. Else, when the menu screen is hit, you hide. There we go. A starless menu. Now, if we have this set all of our stars collected to 1 just to test, and we hit the menu icon, you'll see that all stars are there. Look at that, fantastic. I'm gonna set that back to 0 though. Okay, now let's cover the custom night stars. These ones get a little bit different. So, let's go to the custom night screen to see where we are going to want the star to show up. I think having the star right here would do great. You know, right next to it. So zoom and see how that looks. Go down a little bit. That looks much better. And even if there, the X doesn't touch the star, so it's all good. Great. Or even better, we could put them up here and have them line up, and then you could fill in the gaps, you know. I think that could look really nice. I think I'll do that, actually. So how many custom modes do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, we have 10. We have 10 custom modes, so 10 stars need to fit here. So allow me to mess around here as we figure out how many we need. Cool. So I figured it out how I want the stars to show, and this is how I'm going to want them to appear. Fantastic. So we will make a new one underneath the custom night screen. So what I'm actually going to do is, since the custom night screen we have to delete the clones for the first one, I'm actually going to duplicate this star and say custom night stars. Make the custom night stars completely separate. It'll make this a little bit easier. So that we can say, when I receive menu screen, it will do this normally, and then give custom night screen what it needs. So now let's get into some different stars collected. We got to add a little bit more. So I'm going to separate this. So 5 will be rope, 6 bean, 7 ugly, 8 5, 9 10, 11 15, 12 husband wife, 13 brothers night, 14 the bros, and 15 all 20. All right, fantastic. So now we're going to have 15 total stars, just like that. Fantastic. Awesome. Just what we need. In custom night stars, we will now need to start checking what these are. So these are actually going to start at 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's just start with one at a time. If 5, then we will need to go to right about here. I think that's a little incorrect though, so let's line it up. Right here. Negative 45. Negative 125. Else. Oh, no, we can do this. And then put an else here, right underneath, instead of underneath the create clone, since you can get these in any order that you want, so it doesn't matter if you make a blank. It doesn't really matter. So 45, we need to say plus 30, because we know that 30 is how far they will have to move. So that would be negative 15. 7. Go to 15, and just do this until you have all of your stars done. Alright, I finished up here. I added each and every one of mine. So now if we come in, you will see we go to custom night, and there are no stars. But if we were to say set our stars collected, and let's switch a few of these around, make a few of these some 1s, just like that, and go into custom night, we have some stars. They're up a little high. They're up really high, and they do not need to be. So let's switch up where they need to go. Oh, that's why I forgot the 5 at the end. I forgot the 5 at the end. That would fix it. Okay, let's try this again. Set character AI level, or set stars collected. Just switch a few. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Let's head in and see. There they are. Our stars show up. That one is cut off, and I don't know why. So, we are going to make a block called generate stars. Run without screen refresh, but generate stars underneath here, and we are going to define the spawning of the stars in generate stars. We take a look, acting as if we have all of our stars activated. See, we have a nice row of stars and this little extra one. Okay, I see my issue. I see our mistake. I numbered wrong. After 9, I went straight to 11, which in theory messed up my flow of how I did things. Looking at the customized star, I added 15, which created an extra little star at the end. If we remove that, save, and take a look, we will see all of our stars generate just as they should. And if we were to start a night, if we were to start the game and say we had some of these filled in, some of these we didn't have beaten, what would that look like? Here we go. We see we have some spaces in our stars because we haven't beaten all the nights yet. So let's actually set up how to achieve these stars now. So we need to have a way for you to actually win the night, which is very easy to set up. We will create a variable called time. This time will keep track of our time. Let's create a new variable and let's create a new sprite and call it time management. Inside of this variable, inside of this sprite, we will say when I receive menu screen, as per usual, hide and stop other scripts in this sprite. Then, when I receive night start, we will need it to start counting. Upon starting, we will need to set the time to 12. Then, we will wait 60 seconds. This is just how long each hour is. In FNAF 3 and 4, I know that it is 60 seconds. I think it's 90 seconds in 1 and 2. I'm not 100% sure though. You set this to whatever you'd like. I want every hour to be 1 minute long. After that, it'll set the time to 1. Then, I will wait 60 seconds and change the time by 1. Since 12 to 1, you can't just add 1 to that. So then 1 will go to 2, 3, 4, 5, and then hit 6. So we will repeat this 5 times. Which will end us up at 6. So 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then at that time, we will win the night. So broadcast night complete. Fantastic. There you go. There's your night calculation. So, if you remember, inside of our office, we have to find a way for the player to know what time it is. My office uses an actual clock. So all I need to do is say when I receive night start, inside of this repeat until, I will move my switch costume to switch costume to time. And if we run the game normally, we will see that that stays true. At 12, it is 12. and it should change seamlessly as the night progresses. I'm not going to sit here and wait this for you while recording, so I'll be back once it changes. It's been a minute, and as you see, the clock has changed to 1 a.m. And that will do that progressively throughout the night until you're done. Let's make a new backdrop for when you complete the night. I'll just duplicate our game over screen and call it 6 a.m. 6 a.m. Great. We can now say inside of our backdrop, when I receive night complete, we will switch the backdrop to 6 a.m. and now we will need to grab a sound for our win. Here I have chosen the chill sound. I think it fits very well. I'll make it a little softer. There we go. And then we will choose to start sound chill. I want this screen to last 5 seconds, which it is an 8-second track, you'll see. 8 seconds long, 5 seconds. I don't want this song to be playing on the menu screen, so at that point, I will then stop all sounds. And then I will broadcast menu screen. Once the night is finished, this will occur. We're not actually running the game. Oh, my audio isn't playing. I'm a little slow. This will play. And then it'll bring us back right to the menu. Fantastic. A few things need to happen on the completion of a night. Those things being, when we receive night complete, we will need a few things to go away. Any static will need to go away. Any white static will need to go away. The office will need to go away. The office buttons and the doors will need to disappear and stop working. The mute button, don't know how it'd be there, but it needs to go away. The camera button. Anything that runs during the night that could be showing upon a night completion. That includes all the camera buttons. Everything that can show during the night needs to stop, which also includes your character AI. Once the night is over, you're going to want the AI to stop working. There's power usage, the AI, characters. That also includes jump scares. You could win at the final end of a jump scare. Power outage winning. And there you go. Your night will now stop on completion and the night end will play. However, I'm going to do this in time management. Actually, no, I'll do this in the backdrops. Underneath night complete, what I want to do is before we broadcast the menu screen, we're going to check if you happen to complete a special night. So we will start by saying if night equals 1, or if night equals 5. If night number equals 5, then, so it's night 5 and you've completed it. You got the first star. So we need to replace item 1 of stars collected with 1. Therefore, you beat the night. If the night number is 6, you completed the second star. Now, if the night number is 7, and I am going to create 4 for each character and put an equals in here. So we need to do item. Again, we're doing this in order. So 3 for Romance as he's first in our custom night screen. So item 3 of character AI levels equals whatever. So I'll just say 0 for now. And then it was Bean Chick. Oops. Then it was Bean Chick, so 2. Then it was Ugly, so 1. And then 4 for Bucket Boy. Drag this in here. Say night 7. If night equals 7, so you're on custom night, this is to make sure that there's no possible way that the AI levels just so happen to be the same as on, like, say, night 1 to one of your custom modes. So you're just making sure it's night 7 and these AIs are activated. And character 3. So the first one is the rope difficulty. Rope difficulty was the first one we made. So this would be 18, 15, 16, and 5. You completed the 5th star. If it's night 7, and we completed Bean Night, which in that case is 2, 5, 2, 5, 1, 14. We completed the 6th night. You see what I'm doing here? I'm going to do all the custom modes, and then I'll come back to set up the rest of the main menu ones. Okay, so I finished setting up all of my fun nights, and this final one right here is all 20 mode. Right here, this is all 20 mode. All the characters are set to 20 upon beating the night. This changes number 14 of the stars collected, which again, we can just check over here, right? All 20 mode is both 14 and 3. Keep this in mind, it's 14 and it's 3. So we replace 14 and we replace 3. Look at that. And the final one we need to do is if and it will say equals 1. If item 1 of stars collected equals 1, and 2 equals 1, and 3 equals 1, and we're going to go all the way down the list to however many you have. In my case is 14. So I'll be back once that is done. Alright, I just finished here, and there's one I want to keep in mind, and that is number 4. Number 4 is the star where you collect everything, so make sure... I realized a mistake I made while I was doing this. I'm setting 1 to 1, 1 to 2. Make sure you're setting all of these 1 to 1, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, and so on and so forth. Don't make the same mistake that I did. I'll be right back. Okay, upon setting every single one... Oh, this needs to be 14. Upon setting every single star to 1, 14, 13, 12, all the way down, you need to make sure that number 4, or whichever star you have set to collect all stars, you get a star for collecting all stars, which in my case is this one, needs to be 0, because you won't be able to collect it if you already have it collected. Then what you need to do is replace item 4 of stars collected with 1. Because if we look, 4 is all custom modes, which is really just having everything unlocked, right? Every star unlocked, you get an extra star. Set this final if else to just an if, and make sure you put your broadcast menu screen back underneath all of that. So underneath night complete right here, right above everything here, make sure when you change night, it's not before you calculate, because if you beat night 4, it'll set your night to 5 and then check if night 5 is beaten. So make sure you change night before the menu screen occurs. Right here. Don't forget that as you change the night number, make sure you only change the night number if the night number is less than 5. Or less than 6, excuse me. Less than 6. There we go. Fantastic. Inside of this big check, to check if everything has been completed except your all night, we're going to grab that final piece. We'll close off this if statement. And we'll need to put this underneath right before the night change. Because if you're on the last night you need to complete, right? Last night, final night that needs to be beaten for you to unlock that 4th star on the title screen, which again is every other star. You'll collect the star and then it'll push you down to the bottom because it's in an else. So if you make sure that you put the check for all stars after it checks for the star you just beat, it should add that final star. And that should be everything that you need for your star system. I made the everything go really fast. I made the nights go quickly and I made the night screens go fast just so we can test all of these stars out. So let's go through, beat all the nights really quickly. Night 5, we get the 1st star. Going into night 6, we get the 2nd star. Let's beat the all 20 mode to get the 3rd star. And there's the star showing up here. And we beat rope night, get another star. And we have to get through every single one of these nights to get the final star. So we'll run through every single one of these. We'll do all 10s. We'll do all 15s. We'll do husband and wife. We'll do the brother's night. And yes, we will get rid of the text showing up during the night. Don't worry. And then finally, the bros. And that gives us our 4th and final star on the menu screen, as well as every single star in the custom night screen. So, last thing left to do is come into the custom night names here and broadcast this and say when I receive night screen, stop with description sprite and hide, which will prevent them from seeing the word while playing. Next thing I want to do is also make custom night not visible unless the 6th night has been completed. So go into the custom night button and say when I receive menu screen, we will need to check if you have the star for the 6th night, which is the 2nd star. Okay. We will have to check if equals 1 and say if item 2 of stars completed equals 1, then it'll show. If not, it won't. Therefore, and now when we press the green flag, we'll see that custom night still appears. Inside of our custom night button, we will need to grab an if else. Make this if and if else. Inside of the if else, simply grab stop other scripts in this sprite and hide. When we start the game, you'll see that that night is no longer visible until we beat night 6. Night 5 and the hidden night 6 unlocks our custom night. Perfect. Absolutely fantastic. That's all I have for this tutorial today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked it, then like it, and if you didn't like it, I'm sorry, but like it anyways. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in part 6, the final part of this tutorial. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. See ya. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the How to Make a 5 Nights at Freddy's game tutorial in Scratch. This is part 6. In this episode, we will be looking at how to create secret scenes and Easter eggs. Let's get started. So the first thing I'll show you is secret screens. Secret screens are a rare occasion that happen before your night start. Let's show you how to do that. First, we'll make a backdrop for our secret screen. So here we can see I've made my secret screen. I'm going to call this Secret Screen 1. Now we need to decide when this shows up. We know that this will show up at a small occasion before a night starts. This happens during the night screen. So before we broadcast night start, we need to decide how frequently this rare screen will show. Put a broadcast underneath an if-else statement. Inside the if, we're going to grab an equals sign and put a pick random in the first bubble. If you want your secret screen to be a 1 in 10 chance, for example, all you'd have to say is pick random 1 through 10 and then choose a random number like 5. It will then check if a random number picked 1 through 10 is 5. If you want to make this more rare, you can say 1 to 20, which is a 1 in 20 chance. You can go all the way up to a 1 in 1 million chance if you want, 1 in 100. I'm going to say a 1 in 10 chance, just so that it happens a little frequently for the people that are playing. Let's actually say 1 in 25. I think 1 in 25 feels pretty good. Inside this if-else, if it equals 5, then what we will do is switch the backdrop to secret screen 1, and we'll play a special noise. To make this sound, I'll duplicate our night wind sound, and I'll call it secret screen. And I will reverse it, and I'll slow it down. And then also put that start sound secret screen underneath. Now, we'll say how long we want to stay on the secret screen. Let's say 5 seconds, after which we will stop all sounds. Change this if else to just an else, and then otherwise it'll just broadcast your night start. Let's see if we can get it to show up. Look at that. Fantastic. I love how that looks. So let's say you want the chance for multiple secret screens to show up. This is also easy to do. Go to your backdrops and just simply make a new secret screen. Alright, as we see here, I've made 3 more secret screens inside of our code. After it decides whether a secret screen will show, all we have to do is say switch backdrop to pick random, and then let's find the numbers of our secret screens. As you can see, my first secret screen is 12. And my last secret screen is 15. So 12 to 15. So I'll switch backdrop to 12 to 15. Let's set these odds back to 100% and take a look. That time it shows ugly secret screen. Rope Man secret screen. Bucket Boy secret screen. It will randomize every time, just as you set that up, and you can make as many secret screens as you'd like. Last thing I'll show you is how to create a 1987 custom night jump scare screen, like from the first game. So, what you'll need to do is jump to your Start Night button. Underneath your When I Receive Custom Night screen, you will need to check before it broadcasts the night screen. Before it even sets the number of the night, what you'll need to do is create an if-else statement. Put it inside. Everything that was in this if before will go into the else. Inside of this if, we will need to check if equals. And now we will grab where our AI levels are. So let's check our backdrop to figure out where it is. Ugly, Bean Chick, Rope Man, Bucket Boy, which we know goes Rope Man, Bean Chick, Ugly Bucket Boy. So Rope Man being 1. I'm going to use 1987 as the example. Start night screen, we will check if item 3 of character AI levels, because item 3 is Rope Man, but on our custom night screen, Rope Man is in the first slot. We will check if his AI level is 1. We know Bean Chick is next, and Bean Chick is 2. Her level is 9. Next, we check Ugly, who we know is 1. 8. And finally, Bucket Boy, who we know is 4. A 7. 1987. If that's the case, we will need to broadcast a secret screen. So, I'll make one final secret screen. There we go. He looks amazing. So, we will have the backdrop be switched to secret screen 5, or your 1987 screen, and we'll grab your jump scare noise and we'll move it into the Start Night button. Don't forget to start your ugly jump scare sound, or whichever jump scare you happen to do. You can create a brand new one for this. We're going to create a broadcast letting every other sprite know that this is happening. So above this, we'll make a broadcast called 1987 jump scare. And we'll let every other script know that when I receive 1987 jump scare, it'll stop with the description of the sprite, hide, and for the sprites that have clones, delete this clone. So we need the custom night buttons to disappear. We need the custom night stars to disappear. we need the custom night arrows to disappear. And I believe we have static on, so we'll need our static to disappear as well. So we'll have this play until done instead of start sound. And then we will need to either just take you to the menu, or you can crash the game. If you'd like to crash the game, that's very easy. All you need to do is create a variable, and we will call this crash. We will set crash to any character that isn't empty. So say you set it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then, inside of a repeat until loop, you will choose to set crash to, grab a join, and put crash in both sides. And that will successfully crash the game once the jump scare noise is over. If you don't want to crash the game and instead you just want to send them back to the main menu, you can simply just put at the end broadcast main menu or menu screen. Make sure that the start night button upon receiving 1987 jump scare does not have stop other scripts in the sprite. Let's test it out. 1, 9, 8, and 7. Let's take a look. And there we go. It sent me right back to the menu. Again, if you were to put this crash in there, it would crash your game instead. That's all I have for this tutorial, which also ends this tutorial series. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked it, then like it. And if you didn't like it anyways, because I'm looking forward to seeing all your Scratch games in Deku's Night Shift. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.